Committee, we're going to come back to order. We had a couple members unable to get their lunch given to them in an orderly time, so we'll have to forgive a few of them for eating with us while we're up here, but such is the life, right? So we're going to pick up and we're going to try to move in directly into discussion on public comment as it relates to the EV bill.
County treasurers,
Or do we have them on there still?
We do.
Okay, yeah, so we do have county treasurers and the county, we already talked to the county commissioners. So they came up during public.
Oh, yeah.
What's that? Oh, not on the EV bill. That's correct. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was our last bill. So let's go ahead and bring up county treasurers. I don't see her back yet. So why don't we bring commissioners up first, and then if they make it back in time, we'll go to them. And then, yeah. And some more of remarks from our good friend, Mr. Riemann, if he has them, right?
Well, Mr. Chairman, again, my name is Jonathan Russell. I'm a policy analyst for the Wyoming County Commissioners Association, and we have Commissioner Ryan up here again with us to provide some comments.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Tom Ryan, representing the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. Our remarks are fairly brief, and we'll stand for questions. Counties are on the front lines ensuring Wyoming residents and visitors receive basic services, including quality transportation infrastructure. Before getting far, the WCCA hasn't established a position on this bill yet, although I suspect commissioners would likely support this legislation, save one exception I'll mention shortly. For background, under current distribution, counties receive 20 to 27.5% of the total alternative fuel tax collection statewide. Consistent with Wyoming's construction, we utilize these funds to construct, reconstruct, maintain, and repair county roads and bridges. In Hot Springs County, we have 232 miles of roads, 78 paved, 155 gravel, and we spent approximately $1.146 million last year, and 66% of that was directly maintenance. Our transportation system funding model, tenacious moving forward as electric or alternative fuel vehicles replace gasoline and diesel fuel vehicles, our taxing structure must evolve to meet infrastructure demands. These next generation vehicles aren't without their impacts. For example, the Ford F-150 Lightning weighs 35% more than its gas-powered equivalent. Unless these vehicles contribute, state and county governments will see gradual, if not accelerating, funding and infrastructure-related declines. This bill seems a reasonable approach. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my testimony, and I stand for questions.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Ryan. Any questions for the County Commissioners Association? Okay, seeing none, you're off the hot seat.
Thank you.
Ms. Parvasini, I know you just walked in, but can give you a second to catch your breath if you'd like.
Pretty sure I hit every single red light between here and that direction.
Ms. Parvasini, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself again, and we are on the electricity amendments, the 24 LSO 89.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Emily Parvasini, Sublette County Treasurer, President of the County Treasurers Association. I talked to all the other county treasurers about this, and because the state fee is charged on top of this, so when we figure a registration, we have the county portion that's based on the MSRP, the state portion, which is based on for cars, it's a standard $30 fee. Doesn't matter how much it weighs. Suburban, electric car, a Ford Escort, they're all $30. And then the electric vehicle fee is a $200 fee that we collect on top and then remit directly to the state. I had my counterparts look at some comparison numbers just to give you a little information. And I asked them all to look at their records and tell me how many electric vehicles they have in their counties registered today versus what we had in 2019. And it was kind of interesting because I had 14 counties respond to that request. So it wasn't all of them. So this is about half, and it's not all counties. And there are definitely some counties that have more electric vehicles than others. However, in 2019, I have, between those 14 counties, 68 electric vehicles in 2019. Those same counties today have 262 electric vehicles, and that's not the hybrids, that's just straight EV. That's an increase of about 390% over that 4-year period. So this trend is probably going to continue. I think we're going to see more electric vehicles. And because the weight of the vehicle is not considered as part of how much destruction it does to the road, like it does with trucks. So for a pickup truck, if it's a 3,000-pound truck, it's a much smaller state fee than, say, an 8,000-pound truck. So if you're looking at the difference between the destruction on the road, an electric vehicle probably weighs in like a Suburban or a bigger truck because of that weight. But we're not considering that for now. But the electric vehicle fee, because it doesn't affect the county treasurers and it doesn't affect our bottom line, we don't really have a whole lot of opinion, except that it should be fair and equitable. I've actually had constituents tell me they have a hybrid vehicle that plugs in and they buy a tank of gas a year, or can go 3,000 or 4,000 miles on one tank of gas. And if they're plugging in at home, they are not paying towards the state's cost for road repair. So as an association, we kind of feel like it would be fair to start possibly assessing a fee to hybrid vehicles to help offset some of that cost. And perhaps in lieu of the refund, do a $50 charge for hybrids and a $100 fee for the electric vehicles, instead of worrying about people turning in receipts and having to hire additional people to process those requests. Just food for thought from the Treasurers Association.
Any questions for Ms. Parvasini? Thank you so much again for making the trip over the mountain. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Mr. Pickard, do you want me to just go straight to Josh? Okay. If we can let Josh in. Oh, looks like we're already there. Jeff, I'm sorry. Or is it Jeff or Josh?
Mr. Chairman, it's Josh.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Josh Fisher. I'm the Senior Director for State Affairs here at the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. We are a trade association that represents the automakers that produce the most new vehicles sold in the U.S. each year. So I want to thank you again for the opportunity to provide the auto industry's perspective on these road funding issues and the taxation of electric vehicles. You might recall when I testified at the last hearing in May, I encouraged the committee to consider the potential impact, both positive and negative, of these taxes and fees. The cost of getting to and from work or school or home can often be a major daily expense for consumers. So road funding programs shouldn't add to these concerns and costs for consumers, but instead they should really try to offer fair and reasonable approaches. And that's how we look at this issue. So I want to thank the committee and WYDOT for recognizing many of the issues I raised during that May hearing. I think a lot of those have been reflected in the draft that's before us today, at least on the kilowatt hour tax portions of it. I think those generally align with what we've seen in other states. But one comment that I want to make for your consideration relates to the separate $746 annual fee for the unmetered level 2 public chargers. So one challenge from our perspective to this approach is that sites such as workplaces, hotels, and restaurants, they offer charging and deploy what are called dumb chargers, level 2 dumb chargers. They're called dumb chargers because they're not connected to Wi-Fi or cellular networks for payment or account authentication, or in other words, they're not metered. So an annual fee of $746 could, and as we heard, that's per port. So if a level 2 dumb charger has 2 different ports, you're talking $1,500 a year. So that type of fee level could obviously have an impact on the appetite of employers and other businesses to provide charging as an amenity to their employees or their customers. So a one-time fee of $746 can be twice the cost of some level 2 chargers. You can go on Amazon, you can buy one for $200 to $300 and plug it into your 240 volt receptacle. They're pretty inexpensive and pretty easy to use. But the draft makes this $746 fee an annual fee. So, from our perspective, that could discourage some of this, amenity type charging that employers might offer. I don't really think that's the source of your road funding issues right there. So, we kind of want to take a better look at that. I don't think any other state that has adopted these kilowatt hour taxes have put in such a fee level. Now, some of them, like Montana, who just passed their kilowatt hour tax this year, they have some requirements down the road that those unmetered chargers need to be metered, but they don't go with such a high fee level. In fact, there is no fee level involved. So, our data indicates that Wyoming has about 150 public level 2 charging outlets statewide. So we certainly understand the need for EV drivers to pay their fair share, and that's why we support reasonable taxes and fees. But we also want to be careful that such policies don't actively discourage the private investment in public charging. And I'll highlight a couple other things in the interest of time that we've talked about or have been referenced today. Hybrids. I want to clarify that there's the legacy hybrid, which is like a Toyota Prius. It does have a very small internal battery, but there's no external plug. So it's not being charged through the electric grid. It's being charged, it's taking waste energy from the vehicle and recycling it essentially through the vehicle itself. So there's no external plug. From our perspective, it's just really a very efficient gas-powered vehicle. And frankly, what's really driving these road funding issues across the country is that fuel efficiency requirements for gas-powered vehicles go up every year. So if your gas tax is static, each new model year, most, if not all those vehicles are more efficient than the previous model year. So that's really what's driving the accountable and measurable decrease in road funding. It's not, at least in Wyoming, the prevalence of electric vehicles, right? I think one of the slides showed earlier, there's less than 1,000 registered EVs in the state. But there is what's also called a PHEV or a plug-in electric hybrid, and that does have an external plug similar to a full battery electric. And the range on those vehicles really varies. It could be, the battery could get you 25 miles of charge, maybe up to 100. It's very broad range. Some states have implemented a PHEV fee, but from our perspective, those vehicles are also paying the gas tax because they do use gas, right? So it's a little harder to capture that. And then the other issue, I want to highlight the weight. From our perspective, that is a bit of a red herring because there have been plenty of studies, and we can provide them with you, that the real culprit when it comes to damage of the roads are the Class 8 trucks, 80,000 pound semi trucks, which, cross Wyoming's roads every day in great numbers. Those are the real culprits. Yes, some EVs on average are heavier than their gas powered counterparts, but I can find you plenty of SUVs and trucks that are gas powered now that weigh a lot more than electric vehicles. So I want to be careful when we're talking about the weights of EVs, and frankly, future wise, manufacturers have every incentive to reduce the weight of these batteries and vehicles to improve the range and efficiency. So I don't really, my hope would be that we don't focus too much on weight because that gets really messy. And again, our approach to these fees, are they fair and reasonable? And we think that's the best approach rather than trying to find every penny in the couch cushion, right? Are they easy to administer? Are they fair and reasonable? Do they approximate any lost gas tax revenue, right? And we think the current EV registration fee is the proxy for the gas tax revenue that's lost by battery electric vehicles, right? And so then you add this kilowatt hour tax, which could be in addition to. We want to be careful about too many taxes and fees, but generally the kilowatt hour portion of the draft aligns with what we've seen. Concerned a bit about that annual fee on the unmetered chargers, and I'll leave it at that and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Josh. Appreciate it. Any questions from the committee? I guess I have one, and it kind of goes back to, as I'm trying to pull up the information here, and you probably have this readily available, but I am curious what the average across this country is for an electric vehicle fee charged. I'm sitting here looking at NCSL and ranges all the way from 50 to us being one of the highest to 200. I know that South Dakota and Hawaii recently up theirs to 225. I'm just kind of curious, if you guys were to sit there and say, we'd like you to assess a fee as opposed to go down this road of a kilowatt hour, what's an approachable fee from the Auto Alliance innovation? What's your guys' midpoint for that?
Yeah, and the way we do this, we use the average fuel economy for a new vehicle, a new gas-powered vehicle, right? Because somebody's going to buy an electric vehicle, they're probably comparison shopping between a new gas-powered vehicle, not a 10-year-old pickup truck. So we take the average economy, fuel economy for new vehicles, which I think is around 25 mpg. You take the average VMT for the state, and you take the gas tax per gallon, and you just plug it into a formula, and that gives you an approximation for the average annual gas tax paid. I think I don't have the number in front of me in Wyoming from our numbers. Now, some folks might differ on the average VMT, but we use 12,000 miles a year. And that gets you, I think it was less than 200, but I'm not here to, suggest that you need to reduce that fee right now unless, we really want to get close, right? It's fair and reasonable. The average across the country, you're right, 200 is the high end. Some states don't have any. I think 33 states have an EV fee. The rest don't. So not every state has gone down that path either. So, I don't have the average, but I guess it's going to be, it's about 150, 170, somewhere in there.
Okay.
If I had to guess.
Any further questions? Yes, Chairman Boner.
Okay, so there is a proposal from one of our colleagues who owns an EV to, just get rid of everything associated with those level 2 chargers and simply increase the kilowatt hour fee for the level 3 chargers. Just wondering if you had a perspective on that, if that would be kind of 6 one way, half dozen the other, might get some of the concerns you had with that registration fee while still making sure that, especially these out-of-state drivers are making sure that they're paying their fair share.
Yeah, Chairman. I think when I testified in May, our initial request would be that the kilowatt hour tax, if your goal is to capture the out-of-state drivers, the DC fast chargers that are along the interstates are most likely the best way to do that. And we were a little concerned about going down the path of taxing the level 2 chargers because those are, again, like I said, often deployed by businesses and restaurants for their consumers who are most likely going to be Wyoming residents, right? So yeah, if you just focus on the fast chargers with the kilowatt hour tax, now what that fee is, we can talk about that, but that is, kind of lines up with how we think about this. We think the fast chargers are the better option, just because those are, again, to get the out-of-state drivers.
Follow up.
And a technical question for, as far as how we define, what's a charger, another suggestion, say the definition be DC level 1, DC level 2, DC level 3 as defined in standard J1772 of SA International. So I imagine that's a federal designation. What does that do then as a practical matter? Is that totally exempt the say you get charged apparently any 240 volt hookup even at an RV camping spot, for example? Would that exempt all those?
If you just use the DC fast chargers for the kilowatt hour tax, and a level 2 dumb charger, or that you might see at an RV park, and the 240 volt receptacle, right, which is basically what you have for your dryer at home. That's what we're talking about. Those would be level 2 chargers, and those would not be captured there. So again, I think back in May I said you can really atomize this as much as you want. Like you can go down and you can try and tax everybody everywhere, or do you just want to try and address some of the fundamental problems? We understand that out-of-state drivers are part of that fundamental problem. So going after those folks makes sense. But if you want to go down into the weeds, it gets really messy really quick. And Iowa was the first state to pass a kilowatt hour tax back in 2019, and they're still working through how to implement it. They've had a lot of manpower invested and a lot of time, so it's not easy. So my suggestion would be, the easier you can make it to administer, the better it is probably for Wyoming.
Senator Kolb, did you have something?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just to circle back on these level 2 chargers, the ones that are deployed by commercial businesses. I want to be clear, they are commercial use. This isn't being used in your house, although it could be. And I'll clarify to people that a level 2 charger does not in fact run off 30 amps. You have to run it at a restricted amperage. I've installed them myself for customers and because I'm a master electrician. So you need a larger circuit than a dryer circuit. You can run them at a lower charge rate though, that's true. Particularly the ones I put in was Tesla ones, but I guess I don't have an issue about charging a fee for a commercial operation with a level 2 charger. And if folks want to go put one in their home, I guess they can do that. But to act like and turn a blind eye to that, and then by the statement that, well, you get in the weeds and a lot of details. Well, there probably is. But I haven't heard from you why there's a justification of not having a level 2 charger beyond the fact that it's going to cost somebody some money to do that. But they're competing for people to charge to use the roads, and somehow we have to capture that. And I think that's the challenge that I'm hearing so far. Could you elaborate with another point? Do you have any more points about why a yearly fee? And I'm not saying the yearly fee proposed is the correct number. Would you propose another yearly fee, or would it just be zero? That's my question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, my point was that, this is unprecedented in its own way. So I don't know what the appropriate fee level it is. My recommendation would be to look at it a little bit more closely and think about whether it's actually going to actively discourage folks from installing those. Now, when we talk about what type of charger needs to be taxed, we got to figure out, well, what problem are we trying to solve for? And it's often the problem of out-of-state drivers. So the idea that an out-of-state driver is going to park and use workplace level 2 charging, probably not. That's not the scenario we're solving for, right? It's the folks on the interstates. And so when I say $746 fee on an employer per year to have this amenity charging for the employees, that's not solving for the problem as I understand it. Now, maybe I don't understand the problem perfectly, but that's why I say that. And so if you want to tax every electron that you can, then you're going to put the tax on a level 2 charger. If you want to address the folks who are not paying the gas tax driving through your state, then I don't know if taxing a level 2 charging at a workplace is the way to do that. I think that was my point I wanted to make there. So hopefully that clarifies it.
Okay, let's follow this up and then we'll move on.
Yeah, the issue is they're not paying for the road use. I don't care if it's parked at your business or not. They're not paying for the road use. And that is exactly as you defined the issue. So I look forward to try to figure out how we can do that fairly and equitably. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, EV drivers are paying because they pay the supplemental $200 annual EV registration fee each year, which is the approximation for the lost gas tax revenue for EVs registered in Wyoming. So I would say they are contributing to the road fund.
All right, committee. Josh, appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much. Mr. Baker, do you have anything else to add? Okay. With that, we're going to move on. We're going to go into, I just want to make sure we don't have anybody else we're missing here. We're going to move into public comment on this. We are running behind, so I would like, if we can, to keep comments pithy and direct to the point. And if somebody has already said what you were going to say, try not to repeat that a second time. But please fill the seats so we don't have to worry about playing musical chairs at the end of every time. And then just remember to introduce yourself. And then I know we have quite a few online still. Are they still there? Okay. We'll get to the online people after everybody in the room. Marcia, please.
Mr. Chairman, co-chairman, committee members, good afternoon. My comments say good morning. But, my name is Marcia Allen. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Wyoming Automobile Dealers Association, representing franchise new car and truck dealers. And I provided LSO this morning with 2 handouts that I'll refer to throughout my comments for you as well. Before I begin, I thought I would provide really quickly an overview of our association for those who may not be familiar with us. Most dealerships are members with us, with just a handful that are not. Our members consist of small franchise new car and truck dealerships. Most locations have less than 50 employees, but their impacts within their communities and to Wyoming are notable. Each location is licensed in Wyoming and operates under their own franchise agreements with their manufacturers, even if ownership is from the same for multiple locations. As shown on the handout, Driving Wyoming's Economy in 2022, a publication compiled by the National Automobile Dealers Association, there were 47 new car dealerships that created 5,027 direct and indirect jobs. One statistic not included, though, and extremely difficult to determine, is what the contributions to the local communities are. They provide charitable contributions, event sponsorships, community and other fundraisers, community projects, and so much more. But again, short of polling each member, the actual number is elusive, but would guess it ranges in the hundreds of thousands of dollars each year to their communities. WADA's annual membership meeting was held after your May meeting, and we discussed generally the concept of EV taxation. We were under the impression that it was going to be rules and not legislation, so that's kind of what our discussions were ranged towards. Since this bill has dropped, our members have expressed concern and opposition to how the LSO 89 version 4 is written. Briefly, I will mention the concerns that have been raised and later discuss specifics within the bill draft. First and foremost, dealers are in the business of selling and servicing vehicles regardless of if they are ICE, internal combustion engine, a hybrid, or electric vehicle. They are not in the charging station business, nor do they wish to be. However, to comply with contractual obligations of their partner manufacturers, dealers are required to install EV charging stations at significant investment costs to them. Also, an NADA publication compiled information on a handful of manufacturers meant to illustrate the wide range of investment obligations for dealerships. And additionally, is to show how varied and complex the EV program requirements are between manufacturers. I'm referring to the second handout provided to LSO titled Comparison of Select OEM EV Investment Obligations. As you can see in the few examples provided, the data indicates the required investment costs for dealerships range anywhere from $200,000 to $1.2 million for installing infrastructure. Further, from additional information members have relayed on the programs listed and the programs listed, it's apparent that even though some have similarities, none are exactly the same. Lastly, from that data, at least one manufacturer requires that a specified number of chargers installed are to be level 3 public facing. There are several others that require level 1 or level 2 chargers to be customer facing. From what my members have indicated, most, if not all, have had chargers installed today and have had them for many years. Many of those older chargers, mostly the level 1s, have to be upgraded as technology changes and advances. New installations have been put in place or are being installed in phases. I'm not aware of any level 3 currently installed in a dealership, but I know several have begun the process. I don't know if they are metered separately or not. I haven't been able to confirm that, and somebody in the room could probably better answer that. Importantly, dealers are installing the infrastructure so that they can continue to provide top-level service to their customers who choose to purchase EVs, and is a commitment to the dealership's future. Some examples of those services provided include the ability to charge an EV for a test drive or demonstration purposes, for servicing the vehicle, for safety training, as well as being utilized for other related business activities. Most chargers installed at the dealership are not or will not be accessible to public or customers, particularly those located inside the building, like in a showroom or the service bay. Further, they don't believe they should be required to become licensed, again, and pay additional fees, or be subject to more reporting and audit requirements on infrastructure and electricity utilized for their normal business daily operations, especially since they're already paying significant monthly utility expenses on the electricity used for those operations. On top of this substantial infrastructure investment being made, the additional licensing fees and taxes charged by kilowatt for charging a vehicle all come out of the dealership's operating budget, and most have not planned for that, and they have negative impacts on the business. Every additional expense added to comply with new rules, regulations, or licensing requirements affects the ability for a dealer to provide raises, hire new employees, forces employee benefit cuts, or limits them making other investments or contributions that they might be able to make with the community, to the community. Lastly, the common fear and concern expressed is that they will never be able to recoup the high costs of installation and maintaining the charging facility, but they will continue to make those investments to move forward into the future. This concern comes from their previous experience in most utilization of chargers has not and probably won't occur on their lots. People, especially those traveling, tend to plug in at hotels or while shopping, so they're not idle while they're waiting for their chargers, their car to charge, or if they're local, they're probably charging at home overnight. So now the concerns with the actual bill, briefly, I've got just a few. On page 5, lines 26 through 32, and the definition of public vehicle charging facility. This is probably their biggest concern. It's overly broad, and we would ask that you consider adding an amendment in there for the chargers that are actually being installed for their use, not public use. They're installing them for their businesses. So I'm not a legislative wordsmith there, but on line 33, maybe we could suggest or ask for an amendment that says charging stations installed at a dealership for normal business operations without public access shall not be considered a public vehicle charging facility. Page 6, lines 19 and 20, the same concern as what I just mentioned, and would recommend a mirrored amendment just for conformity. On page 7, line 4, there have been concerns with the date of January 1st, 2025. I know that that's tied to the effective date of the bill, but as I mentioned earlier, some of the dealer installations are being done in phases. They've actually signed the agreement with the manufacturer, and it's down the road date certain. They have to have X amount installed by this date, X amount by this date, and by this date it has to be a level 3, and it may be past that date, so there's concern with that date as well. On line 8, or page 8, lines 19 through 24, they just asked the question of how if that applies to everything, all electricity, whether it's at home in the charging, for charging a vehicle, even if it's for the business operations, if it's just on level 3s, and if it's on unmetered, how exactly would we determine that or know that? Page 9, line 16 through 20, I already made the comments of what the concerns are with that in my general comments. Page 9, lines 22 through 23, page 10, 1 through 3, that is in regards to the $746 licensing fee. That seems extremely high, especially when it's based by plug, and especially if they're not able to, the public isn't able to access them because it's in a service bay or in a showroom. How would that apply, and how is it determined, if there's consideration that can be made with that? And then the rest of the bill, the concerns were made with general comments and other previous speakers. So I appreciate your time in allowing me to relay our members' concerns in this bill draft. One comment I just thought was interesting, somebody outside of the industry said to me, and I just thought it was an interesting perspective. The comment was, looking from the outside in, seems like everyone wants a slice of the pie, but instead of getting a new piece, they keep taking bites from the same piece and ignoring the rest of the pie. So I think their comment, or why I found it interesting, is I think that they were referring to as, we need to look at the big picture, and there are things that are falling through the cracks, like the dealers kind of are in the middle. They're a public facility, but their stations are not actually, most of them accessible by the public. So that's why we would request the consideration on amendments. We truly understand how complex all EV issues are and the importance of maintaining funding for our roads, none of which have easy answers. We would like to continue to be part of the difficult decisions and offer to be a resource to the committee should you have questions or need more information on dealership operations in general. This concludes my testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would stand for questions.
Thank you, Marcia. Any questions? Yes, Senator Kolb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, help me understand the difference between going to a dealership to buy a car, and they put fuel in that car for me before maybe it's a part of their deal to fill it up. And they pay a tax on that fuel they just purchased. So why should they be exempt for filling up, for lack of a better word, fuel into the tank, which is a charge? Then why would that be acceptable to give them an exemption for that and not when they pay for traditional gasoline?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, I think it's a little different because they aren't required to have a special license on top of paying the fuel tax for the vehicle that they're putting gas in for the demo, or for service if they have to drive it to see why it's making that clunky noise. They're not required to have a special license to do that. They're already licensed as a dealership, and that's part of their dealership license. Unless I missed the,
Follow-up?
Yeah, just to be clear, if they have their own fuel system on site, yes, indeed, they need a special license, okay? What it used to be, kind of in the day when everybody had fuel pumps everywhere, right? So they did have to have a special license for that. But I still don't see the difference. We're trying to fairly and accurately deal with a road use situation with, in this case, electricity. So I'm just trying to understand why they want to be exempt for filling up a vehicle when it's going on the road or it's being used just like they would buy gasoline. I'm just trying to wrap my arms around, exactly why they feel like they should have that kind of exemption. Thank you.
yes,
Marcia?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, it's not so much that they're asking for an exemption overall for all of it. They're asking it for their internal business use. That's why they're installed in the first place. So for service, and you're right, back in the day, everybody had fuel stations or fueling pumps on their property. My parents did when I was growing up. So that's definitely not the way the world is today, and none of them have those anymore. But I don't think that we're asking for a blanket exemption just for the business use.
Yeah, Chairman Boner?
Okay, so maybe help me understand that a little bit better. You're saying that these required charging stations are on the property solely for the purpose of, say, a technician plugging in the vehicle so they can work on it. They never go on the road, is that? And if that's correct, how often does that happen? How much electricity you use for those purposes versus a car that eventually goes on the road?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Boner, I don't have an answer for that. I don't know. But what I'm saying, if they're not subject, or if they're in the service bay, then the technician is the one that's utilizing it. The customer would not be back in a service bay, and that's insurance regulations and workers' comp and OSHA and all of the others. Customer can't be back there, so they wouldn't be accessing it. They would be paying probably sales tax on the repair.
follow
So
up?
as a part of that, you would, I mean, potentially they could bring in a empty vehicle and have it fully charged by the time they leave, but it's not as if a member of the public could drive up and just use it randomly. There'd have to be some connection to some sort of service being performed.
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's correct.
I guess maybe to follow up on this, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but my thought is I'm thinking about, every time I buy a vehicle from a dealership, they've always filled my vehicle up with fuel before I leave. I'm thinking of it from that standpoint, that as the chairman is saying, that vehicle's going to immediately go down the road. Why would we exempt that charging when it seems like we're trying to lump them together, because I feel like that would probably happen if somebody bought an electric vehicle, but we're also combining that with the same charger that's probably being used for the service technician who's plugging in the back. And I'm wondering if there's a way to differentiate the two out of those, because I feel like I see both sides of this argument. I don't think that there should be an additional tax on something else when it's just there for service, but on the opposite side, yeah, if you're filling up my vehicle with electricity as opposed to fuel, I think that should be charged. So, committee, anything further? Ms. Allen, did you
Mr.
have?
Chairman,
Yes.
Can I ask one question? And I'll go back to my members and ask, but so somebody will be paying the fee, because if it's for a demonstration purpose and the charger's on the showroom floor and the dealer charges it, so if someone can take it out for a demo, they buy it, then they're going to pay the $200 registration fee. So it's not that it's not being taxed. And the
It's true.
demo purpose is, they're using the roads, but not significantly using the roads. So clarify for me, so I can go back and ask my dealers exactly.
I think you actually hit probably one of the crux points of this issue in general. Is you're probably right. When you look at, it's probably a fractional percentage of what's going to be utilized. Is it a dealership? The remainder of this is Josh was talking a little bit earlier, Mr. Fisher was telling us, there's probably going to be a far greater amount of people that are coming through those are the people we're trying to focus on. But I think that there needs to be parity.
Right.
And I think that's probably what we're trying to deal with at this point. And I think, if nothing else, I think we may have talked ourselves into a circle on this. But I also think that we all have an understanding of what it is we're ultimately trying to accomplish, is that parity portion. So to answer your question directly, I'm not sure what we'll ultimately get to, but I imagine the committee in our infinite wisdom will move forward. Yeah.
So there is a proposal to basically, get rid of the level 2 charging fee and even the metering requirement, and simply increase the per kilowatt hour tax. Would that make it a lot easier for your clients if we were to take that route, just charge, level 3 stations, whatever it is, 4 cents per kilowatt hour, and just get rid of all the things we're trying to do with level 2? Would that help?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Boner, yes, I believe so, because most of them have level 2 chargers, and they've said it's cost prohibitive to put meters on them. They don't know how they would do it. I don't know the specifics. That's just a general statement they've made, and perhaps the experts in the room will know better to that. They just said it's expensive and cost prohibitive to meter them, and they don't know how they would track a level 2. So level 3s, I think, are metered, but I haven't confirmed that. I don't know for sure.
Okay. All right, committee, we're going to move on from Ms. Allen. Thank you so much for your testimony. Welcome. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, Representative Stivard, did you actually have something? Okay. You've got a smirk on your face. That's why I didn't take you seriously. So.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Kristen Gunther. Once again, I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Partnerships with Otter Space Electric Vehicle. It's good to see you again. I'm excited to be here for this discussion. Just as a reminder, we testified at the last meeting in May. We are an in-state EV charging company. We actually specialize primarily in the DC fast charging. Since I last testified, we now have 3 stations up and running in Pinedale, DuBois, and Lander, and we will soon to be opening a level 2 charging station in Laramie as well. So we are up and running. We are actually one of the businesses, I would imagine, referenced by the Department of Revenue earlier in terms of being licensed to charge sales tax. So that is our situation right now, as I think I mentioned to the committee in my previous testimony. So to begin with, I just wanted to express my overall gratitude to the committee for their work on this issue and echo my earlier testimony that we absolutely support the need for EV drivers to pay their fair share, pay their own way, and contribute to the maintenance of our roads and infrastructure, particularly as a Wyoming business that certainly is very aware of some of the unique needs of our Wyoming road system here in state. We support the per kilowatt hour tax level established in the bill. We think that it's an appropriate level. Really, for my own edification, I kind of went through a math problem and pulled federal standards for miles per gallon for some of the new, new vehicles, your classic internal combustion engine vehicles, looked at kind of EPA quoted ranges and tried to figure out the cost per mile of driving given current fuel tax standards and what would replicate that with a per kilowatt hour tax. And 3 cents is pretty darn close, and I'd be very happy to share exactly what I compared and what I looked at. So again, that's an appropriate level of taxation, and it puts us in line with other states that are doing this. We also appreciate the committee's efforts to avoid double taxation and again, seek that parity, try to make sure that we are taxing once for the same services, once for the same transactions. The effort towards reimbursement certainly seems like a step towards that. And then on the note of sales tax and the issue that I raised in my previous testimony, again, in the spirit of looking for parity and working to bring EV taxation in alignment with our fuel tax standards, I do have a proposed amendment that would be fairly straightforward to essentially add electric energy sold at public vehicle charging stations to the existing exemption in the sales tax statute for sales of gasoline and diesel. I do have hard copies if that would be beneficial.
I think you sent that to the committee.
I sent that to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so yes, if you wouldn't mind when you're done, if you'll just distribute that to
Absolutely.
LSO and then they'll get it to us as well.
Absolutely, thank you. And I'm happy to elaborate on the rationale, but again, it's really just what we've commented on before in terms of seeking parity, that if we're trying to establish a level of EV taxation that brings us somewhat on par with the gas tax, that it would make sense to treat EV charging transactions the same as we treat sales of gasoline, and not charge a sales tax in addition to the new taxation that we are levying here. I'll keep my other comments really brief. I want to clarify that all of our charging stations are separately metered. So some of the concerns expressed today around unmetered level 2 charging stations and the implications for those in the bill, they don't necessarily apply to us, but I would echo some general trepidation about going down the road of getting too deep into unmetered level 2 in this bill. And one concern that I just want to highlight is going back to on page 5, once again, that definition of public vehicle charging facility. So when I read that definition, to me, what I think that means is a purpose-specific level 2 charging station where somebody has installed a plug that can only be used by an electric vehicle. But as we know, there are lots of plug types that electric vehicles can use to charge with the right adapter or set of adapters. So for example, if that sort of narrow understanding that I'm sort of bringing to the table would apply, that this might apply to somebody who installs a standard level 2 charging plug, but it might not apply to an RV park that doesn't have a purpose-specific plug, but an EV could come to the RV park with an adapter and charge. On the flip side, if it does include all of that range of plugs, that seems administratively really complicated, potentially burdensome and worrisome for business owners that might have those plugs, but not necessarily want to regulate them as EV charging stations or get them licensed. But also might not want to turn down a paying customer. So I can't speak for those businesses, but just in reading the bill, that seems to be a bit of a gray area. And I think what I would worry about is business owners who have made the investment of putting in those plugs that can serve an EV, having to pull that infrastructure out or otherwise pay that fee. And then if you have a plug that's not purpose specific, that could be used by a range of different drivers, maybe not having to pay that license fee. So coming back to the proposal earlier around the idea of raising the per kWh fee, I think just generally our position overall is we do think that's going to capture most of the out-of-state traffic at those DC fast charging stations. We don't currently operate on the interstates, but we are, again, Pinedale, Lander, DuBois, routes that people are taking on their kind of tourism trips to and from the national parks. And so I think that could be an acceptable solution, just to clarify it for everybody, that, streamline it rather than clarify, to maybe just look at a slightly higher level of taxation on that fast charging. So I can leave it there just in the interest of being brief, but I'm very happy to sit for questions.
Really appreciate your comments, Ms. Gunther. Any questions for Ms. Gunther? Seeing none. Oh, yes, Vice Chair O'Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're only installing DC charging three chargers, right? I mean, right, only three. And
Ms.
you're putting in newer ones, but they're all DC chargers, correct?
Mr. Chair-
No level twos.
Mr. Chairman, we do have level 2s, but they are all on separate electrical services that are metered.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now we've got the questions. All right, Representative Wiley.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Gunther, so, we've heard a lot about these level 1 and level 2 special purpose outlets and plugs and stuff, and to have that service. So why not just require them to have their own separate service from the power grid, and then you can monitor it off of that?
Mr. Chairman, I want to be careful because I can speak to our experience. And for us, we do make that investment to have our own electrical service. And part of that is that we are a company that specializes in delivering fast charging. We're trying to work in partnerships where there's no burden falling on our partner. We're really just trying to partner with, in most cases, local governments actually, to put up these charging stations in ways that don't fall on them. For other operations that might want to look at adding a plug, maybe just have a plug on hand so that the occasional driver can plug in, that would be a much greater expense for them. So it's much more expensive to build a service.
Follow up?
But it could be done, right, without having to meter each outlet, right? You could just do a separate service, and then you could meter that service for those designated specific purpose level 1, level 2 chargers.
Mr. Chairman, I think you could if you're asked, could you retrofit the existing stations?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I can't, since we're starting from scratch, I can't necessarily speak to those costs, but it could be done. I think the issue is the existing stations that people have already made investments in and what the cost would be to then do that. And then, regardless, again, coming back to that definition, are you going to ask the same of, an RV plug that an EV driver might use occasionally? So I think that's where my question, I guess, would be on the bill. I don't know if I answered your question. Okay, thank you.
Senator Kolb, and then we are going to wrap up with Ms. Gunther.
All right.
But we're just running really far behind, unless
Right,
you guys
Mr.
want to stay
Chairman.
here all night.
Oh, I just love the conversation.
I do too. I do too.
A general question, from your knowledge, I was under the belief that electric vehicles themselves monitor, in fact, how much charge they receive, because they have to know the life of the battery and such. So is that your understanding of how the electric vehicle owner themselves has access? I know certain manufacturers do. I don't know about all, but so they know exactly, even if it's an unmetered site, what you received in power in kilowatt for a charge at any one given time of charge. Is that your understanding?
Mr. Chairman, a driver should have access to that information. They should know how much charge they received.
Okay. Ms. Gunther, thank you very much. Just in the essence of time, is there anybody else in the room that would like to testify on the electric vehicle amendments bill? Okay, seeing nobody rushing to the table. If you want to, yeah, I see Bill Ehrlich and Chris Riley, is that right? Okay, let's go ahead and let Chris in, please.
Yes, sir. Can you all hear me?
We can hear you.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you so much for having me. My name is Chris Riley. I'm on Tesla's policy team, supporting our efforts here in Wyoming as well. And just to your earlier question, I did pull up, there's 39 states that have EV fees, and there's 8 of those states that are $200 or above. So just wanted to answer that. And then I also had, as far as the kilowatt hour fees, there's 7 states that have had some type of kilowatt hour tax. So I just wanted to share those. But Tesla, we have, I believe, 72 high-speed charging stalls across 11 sites in the state. And we appreciate the opportunity to provide comment on this today. Again, I'm not going to go through our entire written letter or any that level of detail. Josh and many of the others have shared. But at the highest level, Tesla wanted to offer some comments on this specific to the level 2 charging. This fee at $746 is something that's unprecedented. We haven't seen that in other states. Mainly, we focused on working with states on the EV fee to go to road use charging and supporting that. And our concern on this is really around businesses that have already made that investment and don't have the ability to meter that. So I won't go into that. Again, I know that's been talked about significantly. And I think really for us, the focus on level 3 high-speed charging for any kilowatt hour tax, these are network chargers that have the infrastructure and the ability for that. I would echo the chairman's comments on focusing on that. And then we have the $200 EV fee for individuals as well. I think the out-of-state drivers who are using these are disproportionately focused on high-speed chargers. So I just wanted to echo that as well. And I do think there's a lack of standards even on metering of fast charging, but I think that's at least until 2028. And so part of the hesitation is the timing on this being 2025 as well. And so, with that, I can go into more detail or happy to answer any questions and work together on this. Thank you all.
Any questions for Mr. Riley? Yes, Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You made a comment that the average was $200. What's the highest EV charge out there per state?
That's a great question, sir. Chris Riley, for the record. I have it broken out by state. Bill, my colleague, is also on the line. Let me text him and see if he has the highest number. I believe there's a couple states in that 225 to 250.
I was gonna say, I think based off of the information, I'll just go ahead and answer, was Hawaii and I believe Georgia were the other, it was the other one at 225.
Georgia was the highest.
Anything further, Representative Stivar? Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Riley, thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. And we'll send a follow-up note with more details, but I recognize the interest of time and really appreciate you all.
All right. And then I can't read the name up there. I think it's Mr. Larson. Is that right?
Yes, Lawson.
Lawson. Lawson. I was close. I could almost read that up there. Mr. Lawson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is Patrick Lawson. I'm the CEO of Wild West EV. We're a small family-owned public charging station company based out of Riverton, Wyoming. We started up 7 years ago now, and we've got 10 stations around central Wyoming. Currently, all of our stations are level 2. We put them in before there was really many options for smart metering. And because the usage was so low, but they don't have any of their own services. So so they're sharing the service of the host location. And I just wanted to express that right now, I mean, the fee that's being proposed for unmetered stations is significantly more than what is the revenue from any one of the plugs. So it would be super detrimental, and the cost of retrofitting and putting in a separate service or replacing the stations is tens of thousands of dollars. And yeah, it's something that we just barely got to the point where we paid off the stations over 6 years. So it is there's something I'd bring up. We had about 525 charging sessions last year across the 6 stations we had in at the time. And yeah, there's just not, the usage is going up. It's going up about 40% every year, which is great. But yeah, I just wanted to get a better grasp of what the idea is for the fee per plug for the unmetered stations, because I think the end result would be most people would just remove them.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Any questions for Mr. Lawson? Seems like we have quite a few entrepreneurs up in the center part of the state doing electric vehicles. This is pretty awesome. Appreciate your testimony today, Mr. Lawson. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any further public testimony? Do we have anybody else online? Okay, everybody else online got tired after this morning, so. Anybody else out here? Don't see anybody. All right, we'll bring it back to the dais. Committee, we have a bill in front of us. What's the pleasure of the committee on this? What's that?
I move.
Okay, been moved by Senator Furphy. Is there a second? Second by Senator Chairman Boner. So committee, we're gonna work on this bill as we can going through here. So yes, Senator Pappas.
I just wanted to point out, I don't know, everybody got the email from Representative Yin. You know, I certainly read over it, and this makes a whole lot of sense to me. Again, it's what we just discussed, that that the idea is to try to catch the traveling public that's going through the state, in being able to catch those out-of-state folks and tax them for their use of our roads. When I look at the U.S. Department of Transportation data, on a level 2 charger, according to their data, anywhere from 7 kilowatts to 19 kilowatts, takes 4 to 10 hours to charge, and translates to 10 to 20 miles. So it seems to me that we're barking down the wrong tree at trying to do anything with level 2 chargers. And certainly Representative Yin's email and his recommended changes in here are pointing to that as well. That if we're going to do anything, we should do it with DC chargers, level 3 DC fast chargers. Those are the folks that we want to catch, because everybody else who are either charging at home with a level 1 or even a level 2 at home, or charging at a level 2 at a dealership somewhere, they're really charging very minimally, not very many miles. Those folks are already being caught by the $200 fee that we charge. So what we'd like, I think what we would like to do in Wyoming, I think what is charge those people coming out of state, and they're not going to go to a level 2 charger. Maybe they will if they're overnight at a hotel. But if they can only get 20 miles out of a 8-hour charge, big deal. They're still going to go to a fast charger if they're going to get across the state, right? They're going to have to stop somewhere. And that's, I think, what we wanted. If we're going to do a kilowatt hour tax, we should tax that DC charging only. So I would like, and I don't know if you want to work the bill, but he's got a bunch of amendments in here, and I don't know if you've all read them. I think they're all good. I would like to move all his amendments.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and I do believe you guys have a copy of this. I was just looking at the email. You guys are caught up on that? Okay, so the rest of the world does not know that on the outside, but
Mr. Chairman, as we work the bill,
I was just going to say, I think that would probably be the best is as we go through it, but we do have a motion and a second. So is there any discussion on the proposed amendment as written by Representative Yin and forwarded to the committee? Okay, let's start down here. Representative Berger and then Senator Cole.
I guess what I like about this proposed amendment or the motion that's on, Mr. Chairman, is that we're not looking at any extra fees or even exempting, right? We're not going to exempt anything. We're not going to play the exemption game. And that we're going to look at now just DC power, fast charging, and seeming like, you can help me understand this, that if you are a resident in Wyoming and you're charging at your house and you have an electric vehicle, that your fees are already maybe being brought up, purchased through your EV fee that we asked for, right? The $200 fee. Seeing that, right? That's where, okay.
Okay. Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I like the comments from Representative Yan, except that I really don't appreciate it coming in past midnight for the timing. I mean, it didn't give you much time to think about it or to, come up with some ideas. The concept I do like. I think the amount of the cents per kilowatt hour is low. I'd be more along the lines of 4.5 cents. If we're going to exempt, let's just say we keep everything the same. We don't have any taxation on level 2 chargers. We're just going to tax level 3. And why don't we go for 4.5 cents as a starting point? I mean, obviously that can be modified as this process goes forward, but I think we need to bump that up if we're going to try to actually capture that. And certainly, I think it's within our ability to do that for changing that tax structure by itself. And I think I do appreciate the comment. I think they're good and to the point. So I'd be in favor of a 4.5 cent rate instead of what was proposed by Representative Yan.
Okay. Yes, Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, he did, in his comments, he did bump it up to another 0.5 cent, to 3.5. And I want to be a little cautious here. If you're a state citizen, and you reside in Wyoming and you have an EV, but you do a lot of highway traffic, traveling salesman or something, and you're on the road a lot, you're still going to pay the $200, but then you're going to hit all these fast chargers. So really, if you stay in your community all the time, no problem. The $200 will cover you, and on occasion you might go to, somewhere across the state. But for those folks who travel the state a lot, they're going to be paying not only the $200, but the charge at the tax at the DC charging station. So I'm a little concerned that we go that high to 4.5. I'm okay with 3.5. But
let's, before we go into the proposed amendment to change it from 3.5 to 4.5, we actually have a motion on the table to adopt as is. And then I think what would be best is if we want to do the discussion on the 3.5 to 4.5, let's work the bill and get down to that portion. And we'll accept it as it is with the 3.5, and then we'll go down the discussion with the 4.5, and we'll cast an individual vote on that if somebody wants to bring that motion. So is there any further discussion on the proposed amendment as written to the 3.5 cents, as well as the DC charging and basically what Representative Yin has laid out for us? And basically, and also essence, what everybody out here in the community has told us as well. Okay, all those in favor of the proposed amendment being adopted, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Okay, that amendment has passed. So with that, let's go ahead and work the bill really quickly. Let's go ahead and start off at the top. And what we'll do is we will work these amendments in. This is not a touchscreen computer. I need to remind myself of that. We will work these amendments in so everybody else is aware as they're coming through. And then, of course, the bill will be published with everything in there as well. But let's go ahead and start. Page 1 is just the enactment clause. Page 2. Yes.
Yeah, I would like to propose page 2, the language between line 16 and line 20, that we also, line 16, line 20, that we also add the language of plug-in hybrid. And the fee for that, I would like to propose essentially half, $100 annually.
Okay, there's a motion and a second by Representative O'Hearn. Any discussion? Discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of adding a plug-in hybrid vehicle and modifying that to an additional $100 for those, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Senator Kolb.
I'd like to propose an amendment that we cut the EV rate from $200 to $100 and cut the hybrid rate to $50. So I want to lower it down for future amendment for changing the tax for the high-speed chargers. So we're giving our people something in a chance that they may use a high-speed charger in some sort of offset. So it'd basically be cutting these EV costs because we are pretty high up there. And if we are going to try to get money back on, taxing for the level 3 chargers, I think it might be a fair question to ask. Do we want to do that?
Okay, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second? Okay, there's a second from Representative Berger. Motion is to basically take the fees that we just adopted, 200 and 100 down to 150. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no? No. That motion fails. Okay. Moving on to page 3. Any amendments to page 3? Okay, moving to page 4. This is where Representative Yin's first amendment is in here. Page 4, lines 22 and 23 are deleted.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, just for the sake of discussion, I move that we add the language in staff comment as on the top of page 5 as a definition of kilowatt hour.
Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second by Senator Kolb. And sure, we'll come over to you in just a second. Senator Pappas, let.
Yeah, pretty
Sure,
soon.
Bob.
I mean, not a consequential one discussion here, but since we do define gallon in statute, I think it would be fair to have a definition of kilowatt hour.
Let's add some more to the Green Book. Senator Pappas.
Again, if you read the comments, these are scientific terms. I don't know that we want to get involved in defining, so I don't even know why we define gallon. I mean, you'd have to define gallon by using some other unit anyhow. These are scientific terms that the world knows what 1 kilowatt hour is. I just don't think we need any definition, actually, period.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of defining kilowatt hour as outlined in the staff comment, page 5, lines 11 through 14, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no? It's pretty close. I'll say it fails and then somebody's going to call division. So if you're in favor, just go ahead and raise your hand, please. And all those opposed. Okay, that motion fails. Okay, so let's go back to the amendment as it's written through here. So again, page 4, lines 22 and 23, kilowatt hour means a unit of energy used to measure energy consumption or generation has been deleted. That is the first recommendation from Representative Yin.
Mr.
Moving on
Chairman,
to, yes, Senator Pappas.
I'm a little confused because we deleted that definition in the previous amendment.
Correct.
So we were putting it back in? Is that-
No, I'm just going over for everybody in the public what we adopted
No,
because they
the
don't have,
previous motion on the
it
kilowatt hour.
failed.
What?
It failed. The motion to define a kilowatt hour failed.
Okay, so there is no definition now in statute.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Moving on to page 5, lines 26 through, do we have a question down there? Okay. Page 5, lines 26 through 32 has been deleted and replaced with the following language. DC fast charging station means a device used to charge an all-electric vehicle that meets the definition of DC Level 1, DC Level 2, or DC Level 3 as defined in Standard J1772 of SAE International or an equivalent power output level. So that is the adopted language that the committee has done there. Reasoning behind this, just so everybody has an understanding, is this definition should cover all DC fast chargers while not including level 2 chargers or any outlets.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
should we add hybrid also in front of all electric? Because we've just added hybrid into the page 2. Yes.
Okay, if there is a motion, we can certainly do that. Chairman Boner, do you have a comment?
Yeah, maybe just a technical question for anybody who knows, are those separate types of plugs, or would that definition cover these sort of hybrid vehicles that take gas and a charge as well? Anybody know? Anybody online?
Yeah.
I think what might be a good idea at that point is if, Mr. Pickard, if you wouldn't mind getting some information, and as supposing this bill passes through and is sponsored by the committee prior to session, it would be good for us to have that information.
It could be the same thing.
Yep. So committee will move on from that. Is that okay? Okay. All right. So going into page 6, next amendment from Representative Yin is page 6, line 22 and line 29. This is also found on page 14, line 9, page 15, line 2 and 20. And this is just a definition. It is replace public vehicle charging facility with DC charging station, fast charging station. So this is just a little bit different definition or different utilization of terminology. So any further discussion on page 6? Seeing none, we'll move on. Page 7, there's a significant amendment here. Page 7, lines 2 through 8. Everything after charging is deleted. So I'm trying to make sure where I see that. Lines 2 through 8. Am I on the right page? Yeah. I'm not seeing it right. Am I reading it in there wrong? Delete everything after charging. Chairman, yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm assuming that's on line 2 of page 7, and so it has the effect of just removing the level 2 chargers from the bill, as we discussed.
Okay, I see it there now. There we go. Okay. Page 8, line 21. This is where we can have another motion made on the floor if anybody would like to. This is the change of 3 cents per kilowatt hour to 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour. I'll open this up for any committee directives. Senator Kolb.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to propose that we go to 4 cents instead of 3.5. I think that's a kind of, a compromise. And we can have further discussion and further input. Is that really, the right thing to do to make sure this is doing what we're trying for it to do?
Okay, there's a motion. Second, Representative Wiley. Yes, Representative Wiley.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say that that's a great way to move that, and I agree with the sentiment.
Okay. Any further discussion? Senator Pappas?
Yeah, I appreciate the good senator compromising somewhere between, so I'll support that for now.
Okay. Anybody else? We're holstering the weapons. All right. I will only say I'm actually going to oppose it. And the only reason I'm going to oppose it is simply the fact that there seems to be a fairly level standard across the United States at 3 cents per kilowatt. This was taking it up to 3.5, and now we're looking at taking it additional. Wyoming's already seen as being superbly unfriendly, which honestly, I'm the one who sponsored the $200 fee, so I don't really mind that. I truly don't. However, I think taking this to 4 cents a kilowatt certainly makes us an outlier. That's really my only reason. But Senator Kolb?
Yeah, just to get around Chairman's remorse. the issue, I see it as, we are making compromises, and it may be we're taking it up on the level 3 chargers, but we are giving a significant break for the level 2 and all those other situations. So I think we are doing it differently, but I think it fits Wyoming better.
That's fair. Okay. Representative Berger?
Mr. Chairman, thanks. And I agree. And with what was said in our public comment, especially from our department, that we're seeing more and more of these vehicles, and maybe this is the one solution, that 4% to stay ahead of the game, and yet having to come back to adding more. Maybe the 4%, I'm hoping that the 4% is a great solution.
Okay, well, Chairman's remorse here says that I'm probably going to support it now, because what's going to happen is in 10 years, we're going to be saying we need more money, and it's going to be a fight to raise the kilowatt per hour, and we can just go ahead and do it now. That's fine with me, so. All right, committee, the motion on the floor is to take this to 4 cents per kilowatt hour. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes as well. All right, moving on to page 9, lines 11 through 23, as well as page 10, lines 1 through 3. All new language has been stricken there. That is the $746 fee assessed to the level 2 chargers for public charging. And I believe that is all the amendments from Representative Yin, but let's please continue through the rest of the bill. Make sure there's no further amendments by anybody. Page 10 is just conforming. Staff comment on page 11 is the refiner. Is anybody interested in adding that language? Not seeing anybody interested in that. Yes, Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I'm going to backtrack a little bit if I could.
Certainly.
The kilowatt hours, there is something I think that maybe staff needs to probably investigate a little bit. It's called power factor. And that's something that changes the number we're talking about. Power factor of 1 is unity. And PF corrected, power factor corrected, is what the power company actually builds larger customers. So I wondered if maybe we could ask the question, is PF, power factor, a consideration when we define kilowatt hours? It does make a direct difference on the billable amount of kilowatt hours.
Brian, do you care to opine on that? Is that anything that you have run into in the drafting of this legislation, and anything else that has been considered elsewhere in the country?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of that. The one thing I would note is there is no definition of kilowatt hour now, so.
Mr. Chairman, to potentially add the definition of kilowatt hours and then define it further with power factor if it's necessary, just to review that to make sure we're not leaving something out.
Yep. Mr. Chairman can certainly look into that. The other consideration the committee may wish to think about is whether that's something that can be left to rule as well.
I think that might be good, and/or maybe some investigation by a committee member to bring that amendment as we move forward in session, if this bill is sponsored. Just saying.
Wow. More remorse coming from the chairman, I can see.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Representative Berger.
And just to note on that definition, this is just the coach and the teacher coming out in me. Sometimes it's just best to have as many explanations in there as we can. But when it comes to statute and what the great Senator Papa said, maybe we just don't need that. I guess I just want to make sure we're all covered and have covered our basis on the kilowatt hour.
Well, as previously stated, we did go ahead and delete that in our infinite wisdom. So it's up to us if anybody wants to create that. I would suggest, as it stands right now, I do think that it would probably be a benefit for us to have a definition in there. But I do think that there's some nuances to that we should probably also have that considered. And I think that's probably a little too much for us to do on the fly. I think a little more investigation, a little bit more understanding as we move forward would be better. All right, page 12, just kilowatt hours, conforming amendments, as well as 13. Going into page 14, yes, Chairman Boner.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess I'll make a motion, I'll be specific if you want, but basically to remove the refund part of the bill in addition to the 2 full-time positions and the corresponding appropriation. So that'd be page 14, page 15 in its entirety, page 17, and on to page 18, line 21, I believe. So if we get a second, I'll explain that.
Second.
Seconded by Kolb. And go ahead.
Okay,
Explain
so
the
I think several reasons for pursuing this change. First of all, we did remove the level 2 chargers, which was primarily going to hit our residents. So I imagine the impact of our residents going across the state on a long trip, filling up those level 3 DC chargers is going to be minimal, as we previously discussed. Also, I think, having this provision here requires 2 additional employees, which I think is probably going to kill the bill if the appropriation is several times larger than what we're going to raise in terms of tax revenue. I think that's probably not a wise decision. So for those reasons, I think it's important that we pass this amendment.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the proposed amendment to strike the positions as well as the refund, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Okay, that motion passes. And I believe with that, that pretty much strips the bill of the remaining portion of this. Senator Pappas, do you have something else?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to revisit the staff comment on page 11 again.
Okay.
On, the committee may wish to consider whether a reference to kilowatt hour is even necessary, given the reporting requirement is for the refiner, defined to be any person who produces, refines, manufactures, blends, or compounds alternative fuel in the state. Well, that's not electricity. And so I'd like staff to putting kilowatt hour in there may be a contradiction. If staff could explain that a little better, because maybe we should just strike that kilowatt hour in all those locations.
Yep.
Brian,
Yep.
if you don't mind.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pappas, that was a proposal from YDOT. I think perhaps in an effort to conform that article with references to kilowatt hours, the staff comment just noted whether this specific change was needed. My understanding, the committee did not, in its discussion of this, no action was taken to add this in the bill, so this change will not be made if the bill is voted for sponsorship.
Okay.
And this was discussed with fuel tax examiners, that we basically have, this was in an effort to try to just make sure that everything looked the same in statute, but not necessarily needed. And certainly we could have more discussion on it, but it will not be in the bill.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Representative Pendergraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to wrap my head around a couple of other concepts. I've been concerned for a long time about the additional weight of EVs and the wear and tear on the roads. And then I see EV tractor trailers. Now, I would assume that they have some other premiums that they have to pay because of the commercial type vehicles. But I'm wondering if back on page 8, when we talked about the 4 cents per kilowatt hour, is it maybe considerable, or might it be a good idea to put some sort of a multiplier on there for vehicles over a certain weight, similar to what we do with gas-powered vehicles?
Good question. Anybody on the committee interested in entertaining that thought? Sure. Senator Boner, Chairman Boner?
It's my understanding that mostly comes in with the registration fees, where you have a graduated rate based on the weight of the vehicle. And I believe it only applies to commercial vehicles. But certainly I think that could be a discussion, absolutely. I think within the title of the bill, but obviously we don't charge a different fuel tax based on the weight. I don't see how it's even practical, but I'm sure we'll have a robust discussion about the weight of EVs when it gets to the session, but in order to do that, it has to get through that introductory vote. So I advise that we, that's probably something we could explore later, but for now, I think if we simply stick to the goal of being as much parity as possible, it's the non-controversial goal that I think would have broad support in the budget session.
Any further discussions? Yes, Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was thinking this through about how we're eliminating fees to the department for these vehicle charging facilities. So we no longer will collect $746 annually. My question becomes, these stations are going to be in outlying areas necessarily. And if we want YDOT to certify that they're charging appropriately, maybe we need to collect a fee. I would just like an answer to that from YDOT to see if that's an additional expense they're going to have to incur.
So Senator Furphy, if we want to bring up whiteout, we certainly could, but just so you get the information from Representative Yin, his reasoning says it doesn't make sense on why this would be different from any other fuel, should be by location and not by a per plug basis. License fees for all other fuel types are currently paid on a per location basis. If the $25 per location fee is not sufficient enough, consider raising the fee on all fuel types rather than only electric vehicle fueling stations. So, and I think the other portion of this too is to try to step away from the level 2 discussion, and that was really what that $746 was to look at the level 2 stations. Now we're focusing on those DC fast charging stations, not the level 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But is there an additional expense YDOT has to incur on these charging stations?
YDOT is looking at each other and they're kind of shaking their heads. They don't think so. Does not look like it. So,
Thank you.
okay,
That answer.
absolutely. Any further discussion? Okay, committee, I will just say I appreciate the hard work on this. I knew 5-6 years ago when I passed this $200 registration fee, it was a stopgap. And I knew I created a kind of a monster in there, and we all knew that electric vehicles were coming far quicker than we all anticipated. So this was a very heavy lift. So I appreciate all the work on this. You know, totally your decision on how you vote on this, but do appreciate the hard work. Also appreciate the hard work from Representative Yin to make sure that we're focused in on the right topics here. So any further discussion? Okay, then we have a roll call vote to sponsor 24 LSO 89 as amended.
Senator Brennan? Aye. Senator Furphy?
Aye.
Senator Kolb?
Aye.
Senator Pappas? Representative Berger?
Aye.
Representative Nemec?
Aye.
Representative Obermueller? Representative Ahern?
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft?
Aye.
Representative Smith?
Aye.
Representative Stivar?
No.
Representative Wiley?
Aye.
Co-Chairman Boner?
Aye.
Chairman Brown?
Aye.
13 aye.
All right, committee.
And Mr. Chairman, do you want to decide now or later whether this would be a House bill or Senate file? What's your preference
With
on?
this having a revenue enhancement, I believe it has to start on the House side. So we will do our dangdest to get an introductory vote over there. All right, committee, that puts us in, we worked that for another hour and a half. That puts us into our next discussion topic and puts us into YDOT practices and procedures and the agency efficiency evaluation. Talise, is this you? All right, Talise, please, if you would.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hansen, LSO. I am presenting Bill Draft 24 LSO 86 on the Department of Transportation Efficiency Study. So this bill draft requires a study by an independent consultant to evaluate the Department of Transportation's rules, policies, and procedures. The independent consultant will also review the Department of Transportation's staffing and resources and the distribution of staff and resources around the state, determine whether the efficiencies or cost savings can be gained, recommend whether any changes to statute, rule, or policy are necessary to achieve the identified efficiencies, and provide these recommendations to the Department of Transportation and to this committee. There are reporting requirements which are outlined in paragraphs 6 and 7. And then section 2 provides an appropriation from the general fund to the governor for purposes of retaining an independent consultant to conduct the study required. The staff comment on page 3 just highlights that the committee will need to consider the appropriation amount for retaining an independent consultant. And then section 3 provides for an immediate effective date. And I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Talise. Any questions for Talise on the bill? Pretty straightforward, but. Okay, seeing none, I believe that brings Director back up. Director, welcome again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Darren Westby, Director of WYDOT. I appreciate the effort on the bill and the work put in to do this. And as part of getting prepared for this, I asked for a little, I guess, some guidance on how you would like me to proceed with this. And one of the things that was asked of me was to give a kind of an update after almost 5-month dating period as interim before I was selected to the permanent position. Just kind of give you a little bit of background of not so much why I was selected, but some of the things that I was asked to do and some of the things that I chose to do while I was in interim was to kind of analyze the agency, kind of see what not the good, the bad, the ugly, but try to ensure that I was analyzing it to a point where I could come back and develop a roadmap in which to take the agency forward. And not to say I wanted a 5-month-long interim process, but I was grateful for the length in which I had to really take a deep dive into not every program, but definitely the ones that had the most significant eyeballs on them. And so just really quickly, Mr. Chairman and committee, the biggest thing that I found was we have 300 plus vacancies. I talked about that earlier. And if you saw the press release, that was my #1 goal coming into this position, at least short term, is I got to do whatever I can to fill some of those positions, try to take some of the pressure off the existing 1,746, I believe is what we have to date, currently active employees within the agency. Hopeful that I can do that to relieve that pressure of just pure fatigue on what they're having to do out there. Coming from State Parks and Cultural Resources, I had really amazing product to sell as an agency director. Our team had a great product to sell over there. And as such, I had really passionate and prideful employees over there. So leaving that agency, coming over here, I just not skeptical, but was definitely worried about what was I going to walk into when I came into an agency this large, not quite as sexy product, but from an impactful product perspective, it is massively impactful, the product that we have at WYDOT. And probably the neatest thing that I found was that the people that we have in WYDOT, they are monumentally passionate about what they get to do on a day-to-day basis. They are monumentally prideful in what they get to do on a day-to-day basis. And for that, I'm very grateful in which I get to work with them. So recruitment is my #1 goal, trying to give that team member a little bit of breathing work. In doing so, we're going to have to change some of that, somewhat of the culture of trying to make WYDOT desirable to come work for us. Try to make sure that our positions are desirable to internally to create a decent succession plan coming up through the ranks. Why would you want to be a supervisor if your supervisor complains about being a supervisor all the time? So just from a basic level of desirability at that point is something that I know can be changed relatively quickly just by not complain about how much it takes to be a director and what, I hope that by the time I'm done in this role, that when I walk into a room and ask who wants to be the director, I have a lot of people raising their hands. So that's, personally, I'm taking that as a personal goal of mine, is to try to make this job, sitting in this hot seat, at least monthly at one form or fashion or another, to be a desirable position. So the second goal that, and we've talked about it a lot today and probably will continue to talk about it, is trying to, I think Dennis talked about the revenue percentages, the federal versus state, being 30% stateside funded, 70% federal funded. I don't want to see the federal side go down. As Chairman Brown, you were talking about, we need to get some of that money back that we've been paying the federal government on some of the taxes that we pay, trying to raise the level of stateside funding so we can continue to go asking for some of those larger project discretionary grants, be able to match those funds that are coming in from a federal side. I would sure hate to get to a point where we don't have enough stateside match to be concerned about going forward in being able to accept some of those grants. One of the big ones that's coming down the pike, and I'll just lay the groundwork starting it now, the I-80, I-25 interchange project is going to be a big one. It's not going to be anything that I can match internally. It's going to have to come elsewhere on that match. And so looking not just on those big projects, one-time ask, but looking at all the smaller ones that are coming through that make a huge impact to our state. Talked a lot about the DIE study, DIE management study. I don't need to go into that, but that is definitely something that is deep into conversation in all the meetings that we're in, is how do we ensure that we talk about efficiency, and we talk about, how can we decrease the cost of government? Well, I can tell you, we're down $500 million a year. I think we're lean. If I was sitting fully funded and I didn't have to tell you that I'm down $400 million a year, I'd say we could have the conversation that I could be probably become a little bit more lean. But right now, as I'm continuing to look through every program that we have, and the report, I really appreciate the LSO's memo and the report on everything that was done with, that was submitted in the packet on what we did with the study that was done back in 2017-ish, I believe, that was directed by the legislature through the governor's office. It talks about a handful of things that we were directed to kind of work on, or at least were suggested to work on. But I really appreciated you submitting the rest of the stuff that the agency put forward prior to that. I think it's about a 30-page document of all the things that we took it upon ourselves back in the day, and continue to do that on a regular basis to ensure that we are being as lean as possible. Yes, selfishly, I would love to say that we're doing it because we want to just be as fiscally conservative as possible, but quite honestly, I believe it was done out of necessity, that if we didn't get that lean in that efficiency side of the house, we'd be talking about a heck of a lot more than $400 million a year. And so I really appreciate you putting that in there, and hopefully you guys have a chance to read it, because as I had a chance to read the document, I was pretty prideful and proud to say that the team's putting forward a pretty good effort going forward. Going into more funding, and I briefly talked about it, but the federal minimum royalties and severance caps, and I know there was some discussion last session about trying to take a look at those. Those are things that from a revenue stream we'll have to look at. There was some discussion about indexing on fees and that kind of thing. Those are all things that I think can be definitely looked at. If we're looking at a stable form of funding, since they took the cap or placed the caps on the federal minimum royalties and the severance taxes, I think it's over $1 billion that WYDOT has not received because of those caps were placed. And so we can see it on our roads. I think you can see it every time you travel on our roads. We're definitely doing as best that we can to keep the roads looking good, but we definitely have a lot of room for improvement. I'd love to say it's all because of funding, There's definitely some staffing issues that we need to pick up on, and which is why I chose those as my number one and number two goals going forward. Overall, just culturally, Mr. Chairman, we got a lot of silos in WYDOT. If you can imagine, we got 47, 48 different programs. Each one loves their program. Really trying to see what we can do to break those down and make sure that we're talking amongst ourselves. That's an internal look. What I really need to do is focus on the external look of what we're doing locally, what we're doing with all of our partners to ensure that we're having those conversations. And just because we're 2,051 employee or full-time employees and $954 million a year budget does not mean that we're so big that we don't need help. We can definitely partner by breaking down those silos and ensure that that happens. One of the things that I've heard throughout the last 5.5 months now is the credibility. We've lost some credibility. And I'm hopeful that given some time, given some leadership and direction, we can change that credibility and respect back to hopefully make WYDOT desirable, not only to work for, but to work with. And so really excited to work with all of our stakeholders, the truckers associations here, the contractor associations here, taxpayers associations here, a lot of county commission association. Those are all stakeholders that we need to work with in a very strong fashion to ensure the success of our mission. To Representative Pendergraft, you talked a little bit about efficiency, and one of the things that I talked to the team about before I can really get aggressive with coming to you with suggested modifications or changes, I want to make sure our front yard is clean. I want to make sure that we're squared away. I want to make sure that we have our ducks in a row, that we're asking for what we need, not questioning when we ask something. I shouldn't have to question, are you sure we need it? When they ask, when I come to you and ask you for something, I hope that you can, from a respect perspective, say, he must really need it if he needs it. Because one thing I can guarantee you, standing up here, sitting up here, it's not the funnest thing I can do on an afternoon, but I really appreciate the time and that you gave me. And I know it's a little bit off topic, but the door was open and I felt the need to explain a little bit. The efficiency bill, I'll end on this. I hope that I can get a little time to make and effectuate positive change within the agency. We have a good team, like I said, started at the beginning, and I hope that we can get to a respect level that a bill like this doesn't need to be drafted. That's truly my goal. One thing I can tell you, I've never shied away from an audit, never will. I'm proud of the team. Any audit that comes up, there will always, hopefully, there will be a finding. Hopefully it's something put in place to make us better. I know I'm doing the audit, I'm doing the assessment, I'm doing the analysis right now, albeit I'm not going to spend $250,000 to do it, but I'm going to do it myself as long as I can and use the team to ensure that we're moving the agency forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Yes, Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few things I'd like to say that Wyoming roads, they're not so bad. Drove in Colorado and you better put padding on your head and your truck because it's a roller coaster down there. So I'm pretty proud that they are as good as they are. I realize you always want to do more, but on this efficiency study, well, it's going to be like 7 years since the last one, since 17, by the time this really goes anywhere. And I hope you don't, take offense to somebody wanting to do an efficiency study. And my thought about the efficiency study really circled around the fact is statewide. In other words, what are we doing with I-80? In other words, are we prioritizing 25, 80, 90 properly? Like, are we using our money properly? And it goes well beyond, the WYDOT. This has to do with people thinking they're getting a fair shake.
Right.
Like other communities, are they getting what they need? Folks that live in the northern part of the state compared to the southern part. Is it fair? Now that's what it's about. For me, it isn't the question, you know, I don't know, have the Spanish Inquisition going on amongst YDOT. It's to be fair and get an accurate picture. And I think for as big as your budget is, I think it's really a mandatory thing that it gets revisited.
Sure.
It's not a slight on anybody, you know, I certainly don't take it that way, but it's to get a better, broader, I think, a third person's objective picture of what we're up to.
Sure.
You know, that's, thank you. And I guess if you have a comment, I'd certainly like to hear about it.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I don't have a comment, nor do I take offense to it. I just, I know I'm trying to work hard to ensure that we're being as efficient in the general scope of government that I've heard several times. You know, if government's not efficient, not effective, I can tell you that that's not an accurate statement. I heard a little bit about privatization, and I did a big study back in my other agency about how to potentially privatize state parks. Well, there's a big difference when you start looking at how much it costs to do something in-house for labor force that I'm obviously having a hard time competing against the private sector, because the private sector needs to pull from my workforce to work for them, to then on top of that, they have a profit that they have to make. And so it's really difficult from an efficiency standpoint to say that privatizing it can save me money. I think from an efficiency and effectiveness, we can definitely have the conversation. And like I said before, I welcome any audit or any review. And if there's a third party out there that can help ensure that I'm making the right decisions or guide me to make the right decision, I'm all for it. I'm in a situation where we're short on a little bit of cash. I'm concerned about paying for it. But if that results in a better product, I'm willing to do it.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Director, we spoke back in May, and I think this is a tremendous opportunity to help you in your own audit, in that we have this change of command, if you will. So you have an opportunity to come in and look at it objectively. Nobody's pointing the finger at anybody. Just say, we need to take a good look at it. And here's why it's critical to me. We have enjoyed, the state of Wyoming has enjoyed tremendous income over the last many years. And we have been living very well. And the state does a lot of things that are essential, but they also do a lot of things that frankly are not, and that are kind of luxuries. And we like having those luxuries. So I want to make sure when times get hard and the revenue drops off and we are forced to start making cuts, that we don't cut anything that we don't have to. And so to me, to be able to have this accomplished and then to follow up on it, as opposed to what may have happened with Alvarez and the rest, it feels like a lot of those recommendations were never made. I would like to see this so that we know that when you come to us and say, look, we've done everything we can do, and we have to turn around to Parks and Rec or somebody else out down there and say, you know what, this is an essential. We have to have our highways. We're going to do without a monument or some of those things that we've done everything we can do. And I just invite you to make any comments on that, and I will be quiet for a while.
Director, anything further there?
Mr. Chairman, no, and like I said, I welcome it. I just question the cost that it might take. But like you said, it could be a very valuable tool.
Mr. Chairman.
Let's go Chairman Boner and then Senator Pappas.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So looking at this 2017 study, it looks like a lot of the recommendations were sort of like a whole government efficiency, type recommendations, consolidating HR, A&I, those sorts of things. I think if you've been in the legislature any amount of time, you're familiar with those efforts. And then you have that, that very thorough 30-page document that I understand was YDOT submitting to the consultants all the things that you've done over the years to become more efficient. And I appreciate all of that, but I think this would have a little bit different focus in that you would have maybe the focus would be on that 30-page report, except you'd have somebody from the outside coming in and providing that analysis. And to my understanding, that didn't, it looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that did not happen in 2017. The Efficiency Commission was a little bit broader, all state government focused, and then the YDOT specific instances seem to come from the bottom up instead of having an outside consultant come in and take a critical look. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, from what I can't necessarily speak on what Alvarez Marcel did in YDOT, but looking at the report, it looked like there were some questions that were asked. YDOT put forward some potential solutions. So you could be on track a little bit on that. I can't tell you how deep they went into the agency and looked. So again, I don't want to sound like I'm shying away from somebody coming into my front yard and looking past the windows. When or if it happens, I would definitely use it to my advantage to be more successful with you. I can guarantee you. So I'm going to be very forthright, and will direct the team to be very forthright with the analysis. And when the report comes out, I'll use it to cheerlead like crazy to ensure that I can be successful sitting in the front of the legislative body.
Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see this a little bit differently than I think most of you. Well, I'm certainly not opposed to efficiency studies, and we need to, as Senator Cole mentioned, we need to do this probably on an ongoing basis. My big concern is, and I think my cohort here on the Transportation Liaison Committee is probably in agreement with me. We've seen a lot of change from the old leadership, the previous leadership, and now we have a new administration. Things are going to be done differently. So if we do a review now, it's going to be about past things. I know in the next year he's going to just by knowing Darren and knowing what he's brought to the Transportation Commission, there will be changes. I don't want to see a review and a study done on past practices. I think while I think the review is good, I think it's not prime time right now. We're not ready for it. I think we need to give him a year under his belt, implement the things, and then study what his leadership is doing and what he's done to the committee, what he's done to the department. I think right now to spend $250,000, $300,000, we're going to be studying something that's in the past. I'm more interested in letting him get on, some mileage on the road. No pun intended.
I'll take the pun.
And then let's come back next year and do the study. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I do have the chairman of our Transportation Commission. When would be appropriate for her to say a few comments?
I'm going to just go ahead and apologize because I was notified this morning you were in the audience, and my apologies. But please, if you'd like to join us up here at the table as well, I think this, committee, one of the things that's important to recognize about our committee is working with YDOT. The commission has just as equally, if not more important, in many cases, the budgetary side of things, and they set that, and they have far more meetings than we do. So please, Chairman, Chairwoman, please introduce yourself and elaborate if you would like to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Susan Holmes. I'm the current chair of the Transportation Commission, which is one of 3 commissions that seats and oversees YDOT's operations. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today. I think Director Westby has provided some very specific, very realistic goals for his new tenure with the agency. And I would support Senator Pappas's position that things are very dynamic right now, to say the least, probably. And that I think for the sake of efficiency, an efficiency study really isn't appropriate for the current time. I can say for my seat on the Transportation Commission, we are fully seated for the first time since I've been on the commission. We have some very new, very engaged, very interested new commissioners that are chosen to represent specific regions of the state, that are bringing fantastic ideas, deep involvement in what's happening in the state transportation system, that I think are bringing the equity statewide that Senator Kolb mentioned. So I just think there's a lot of new blood, new thought within the commission and within the agency. So it would appeal that now is not the time. I think it might be very useful in a year or two, but not now.
Okay, Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you for your comments. I know you folks are working hard, trying to do the best things for the state, but I don't know how we got off track. It reminds me of something we talked about a little earlier, that the focus on this isn't past practices of WYDOT. I don't know where the heck that came from. It certainly was not my idea nor my topic or what I'd say. It is about what's currently going on. That is all. So I don't get this past practice story, but I'm about what's going on currently, Director, with you and how you're doing things to help you. And the fact of the matter is 7 years is a long time between studies, and things have changed dramatically in 7 years. It is not the same. We're living in a whole different reality now from 7 years, forward in time. So I know that the people are hesitant to move forward with anything like this because I don't know, it seems like I would say, I'm just going to put myself in your shoes, seems like you're being questioned on what practices are. And that's not, I'll say it again, it's not my intent. And I was the one who brought this efficiency study up, that we look at what is going on and we look at it in a broad way across the state of Wyoming. It goes well beyond WYDOT. Let me assure you, well beyond WYDOT. There's other issues here to get money for projects, things that you might want to do. We have to have the state to buy into what you're up to. That it's justified, it makes sense. There's data that backs up what you've done. That's it. So this is about current events, not past practices from 100 years ago when we had wagons. This is about what we're doing right now, and what we're doing right now, is that the best we can do as an outside perspective. That's all. So that's why I'm supportive of this, just to try to stab at this again. And maybe I did a terrible job the first time I talked, so I tried again. Thank you for listening.
Okay, what I am going to do, committee, is I do want to make sure that we're asking questions. I think we all understand what some of us are trying to do on this side of the dais. I think we all understand after probably the third or the fourth time of the director, as well as the chairwoman explaining their position. I don't think we have to continue to beat this dead horse. And I'm just going to take chairman's prerogative here and ask if there's any questions that need to be asked. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For either of you, is there any mechanism to incentivize all your staff, all your employees, of ways that they see inefficiencies to bring forth ideas to cost save and incentivize one way or the other?
Do you know the internal?
Director? Well, okay.
She has an answer.
There is an internal audit process that is done. I believe it's annually. And that audit is reported directly to the commission. So the different programs within the agency are reviewed on an annual basis. Any problems or things that need to be recommendations or areas that need improvement are brought to and reported directly to the Transportation Commission. So I think that's a very good and thorough and frequent way to review operations and to help the staff on a real regular basis look at ways to improve efficiencies.
Mr. Chairman, just to add to that, if we don't have an incentive type process in place. I know at my other agency, we did have not a eat what you kill, but it's definitely an efficiency. If you can save money by doing this, you get to reap some of that reward, not just have it all go back and get reverted to the general fund, that we can increase the opportunity to do some of your borderline wants. They're still on need, but at least start whittling down more of your need on a quicker basis. But it's something that I can definitely make sure that we're looking into at this agency.
Committee, any further questions? Seeing none, I see another smirk, so I'm not going to take you seriously again. Okay. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chairwoman. I'm going to give my sincere apologies for not recognizing you earlier.
No worries.
so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have Chief Perkins online? We do not. Okay. And I figured he was going to be a little busy, but yeah, he's, he graduated from us apparently and doesn't want to talk to the legislature anymore. So, all right, committee. Well, we have a bill in front of us. What is the pleasure? Oh, I guess we need to do public comment. Any public comment on this? Please.
My name's Shane Sweat with A1 Recovery and Towing. I thank you for going and doing an audit on these guys. They have officially thrown me off the list in Laramie as a wrecker company. One for not having a second semi-wrecker. I don't have an extra 500 grand, guys. Can't do it. I'm a one guy deal. 30 years in the business, never needed a second wrecker. But obviously, WYDOT thinks I'm off the list. Same with the Highway Patrol. The statute that they came up with, the new rules, one owner, one company, which I have. I'm one owner, one company, 5 DBAs. If that's illegal now, under the state's provisions, I would assume that we can take the Big D Oil, Taco John's, McDonald's, turn them into one owner, one business. That would only be the fair thing to do. That's a new policy of Wyoming. I wanted you guys to know that WYDOT's policy should be only concerned about the public safety. That's it. Shouldn't be anything else. You have a free towing system from all the towers across the state. But if you live on I-80, you now have to come up with $500,000 extra for a used wrecker to get into the business. Meanwhile, I have to pay 5 building payments, 5 light bills, heat bills, insurance bills, phone numbers, everything that I'd set up for the last 26 years of being in business for myself. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to me. I want to thank Governor Meade for giving me 2 governor's awards, the peace officer people for giving me awards, the mayor, the city council, and of course Friedenthal for giving me a governor's award. I would not want to be in your position, but maybe that's the way I have to go, because at this point, this is an abuse of power. It's against my civil rights, and most importantly, it hinders commerce. And for you guys to know, we're down to 1 company in Evanston. We're down to 2 in Rock Springs. Don't count on I-80 being open. It can't be open. There's too many pileups. There's not enough people. I know 16 highway patrolmen, they're quitting on the I-80 corridor. They'll be gone before the snow flies in November. You guys have got a big mess going on I-80. And the Truckers Association will be suing the crap out of us because we are going the wrong direction. And I am by no means saying that it's Westby's fault. He just got here. He doesn't know what's going on. But the rest of this, that meeting that we had last September with WYDOT, not one person voted in the public comment for these rules. Not one person. It's on video. And they went ahead and passed it anyway? That's just an abuse of power. But like I say, I really want to thank you guys for listening to me. Hopefully we can weather the storm, but this looks like, at best, I wouldn't get back on rotation. The towings are, basically, I've had some legislative power that has been helping me out as best they can. It's not in their wheelhouse, but they have called, and basically he wants me to say, I'm willing to give up all the companies and go to one. I'm not, guys. I'm not willing to do that. I didn't set out in life to try and give my kids something. My family is it. I am the son of Wyoming, 520 Social Security number. My kids are there, my brother's there. That's my family business. It runs on I-80, and you can ask anybody. I am probably the fairest towing company out there. If you get a $100 bill for storage per day and you got locked up for 3 days or a 5-day weekend, I don't charge a storage because I can do that. That's my prerogative, to not waive, just to charge you the $300 for the dumb DUI bill. But I do that because they're from Wyoming. Now, I might not do that if you're from Colorado, but I'm gonna do that if you're from Wyoming because I take care of my own. So I really appreciate your time, guys. Thanks.
Mr. Sweat. Thank you again for joining us.
Yep.
We do appreciate it. Any further public testimony on the efficiency study? Seeing none, we have nothing online. We will close that and we will bring it back to the dais. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Kolb, seconded by Pendergraft. Committee, we will need to work the bill. Before we go into working the bill, is there any general discussion on the bill? Seeing none, let's, oh, yes, Chairman Boner.
Yeah, maybe this could fit now or fit later. I heard, I have a question about the costs associated with it. I heard, $250,000, $300,000 thrown around. Just want to make sure. I was hoping Chief Perkins would be on the line. I was asking him to have a specific answer. I guess not, but just wondering, anybody who might have thrown around those numbers, is that based off of a previous experience? Where those numbers come from? Anybody, I think maybe the director threw that out there, or Senator Pappas did. Go ahead.
Senator Pappas, please.
No, my number was just based on other studies we've had done, especially my time on school facilities. Seems like things were 200 to 300,000, somewhere in there, depending on, the effort, but typically it was around 250, 300,000 on most other studies. So again.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Brian?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the initial bill in 2017 that created, I think that the first iteration of the Efficiency Commission appropriated $300,000 for that group's work. I think that included some of the Alvarez and Marsal study that was done. I certainly couldn't speak, Mr. Chairman, to whether that amount is what is necessary for what's contemplated in this bill.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look at this as an opportunity to help you to assist what it is that you're going to do. Military background, a lot of times what we did during a change of command was just go in and with outside people and look at what was going on, where we can fill in the gaps, where we can do better. As for the money, I'm reminded that we discussed and thankfully killed the bill to spend 3 times the $250,000 on a painting to put in our own office. In the grand scheme of things, looking at the budget that you guys have, this isn't a lot of money. Now, that said, the last thing I want to see happen is us expend money as we did Marshall and Alvarez years ago. That's before I got here. But most of the recommendations, if I'm not mistaken, were never acted upon. And so if we do this, if we spend the money, then we need to take it seriously and make some sort of action on what comes out of it. Thank you.
Let's go over here to Representative O'Hearn and then to Wiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are we going to put out an RFP with a figure on it? And this goes over to our November meeting? Or do we say, we put an open RFP out and say, how much is this going to cost? Because not any company can do this kind of stuff. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Wiley.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would also suggest maybe we look at the general fund to fund this. I mean, we've heard earlier in testimony, they've kicked the can down the road on $70 million worth of projects that they can't fund. Why would we burden YDOT with more? You know, if we're willing to do this study, we can find the money somewhere else. I don't see that would be a problem if this is of such high pertinence.
Okay, I'm going to go to Senator Kolb, then Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we need to peg an amount on there, at least for discussion's sake currently, and I'd be in favor of starting at $250,000. I think as this bill works through the process, that'll be flushed out on where the money's going to come from to pay for such thing. But we're talking about almost a $2 billion biennium budget here. So I don't think 250,000 is going to break the bank, but I think it would behoove us to put a number on it, and I would suggest $250,000 as an amendment to fill in the blank.
Okay, so is that moved in? Do you want to go ahead and move that?
I would move that.
Okay, so it's been moved, seconded by Pendergraft for $250,000 for the X marks the spot, if you will. Any discussion on the $250,000? Yes, Representative Pendergraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this should come out of the general fund. I spoke to John Richards just a couple of days ago, and we were talking about what he calls the main checkbook, which handles the general fund, handles the LISRA. And he said to date, we're about $16 million ahead of their projections, which we're already ahead. And he also said that we're anticipated to do even better in the near future. I agree, let's not further burden YDOT with this expense. Let's pick up the tab.
Okay, I do want to just, for the committee's edification, as well as anybody else who may have not read the bill, it is kind of concerning to me that we're having this discussion when the bill does say from the general fund to the governor. So it's very clear in the bill where this was coming from, and I think I think we're kind of walking around in circles here. So it is coming from the general fund. So any more discussion on the amendment as posted? Okay, all those in favor of $250,000 for a placeholder at the time being, please signify by saying aye. 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 All those opposed, no? No. Motion fails. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that motion does fail. I'm pretty good ears. Don't tell my wife that because she'll argue, but all right, committee, coming through the bill. Let's go ahead and work the bill. Since we've already had that discussion, maybe we'll come back and we have to put a number in here. So Representative Berger?
So we're done with discussion on the motion now on the bill, right?
No, we're working the bill.
We're working the bill?
So if you have general discussion, you're more than welcome to open up and have general discussion. If you
So here's my general discussion, Mr. Chairman, if I may. I looked at and read some of those efficiencies reports from 17, like we said before, it was said that sometimes those aren't acted upon. And my question, and I look at a lot of them, why aren't they acted upon? And a lot of times it comes down to funding. Do we need an efficiency survey to tell us that we're short 400 million or whatever it is? You know, that's my question. And then my other question is, and no, you know, I hope maybe the efficiency study needs to look at, are we making sure, especially along I-80, I guess, do we have the right, maybe we just look at just our policies so that they're not limiting or cutting out those businesses that need to be working and helping us out on I-80. Is there a reason why we're not allowing these businesses to be profitable or whatever that is? Is there a statute on that saying you can't? I guess I don't know a lot about that right there either. So maybe if the study did that for us, fine. But
I just don't know if we need a study to tell us we need to spend more money when we already know that we need to, if we do need to spend more money to be more efficient, then maybe we already know that. I don't know. Just thoughts.
Committee, just in the sake of time, let's go ahead and work the bill. That's only 4 pages. Page 1, again, is just granting access to the governor. Page 2 is the scope of work, in essence, of what the efficiency study would look like. And then providing by August 1st, this committee, as well as the governor, would have a preliminary report next year. And then by going into page 3, it does go into the no later than November 1st, would give us time and probably our last meeting to prepare any efficiencies that we see that we would like to have done into potential legislation for our last meeting next year. For those of us will be around, I guess we would still be around at that point. And then staff comment over here is the last piece we do need to have. We cannot leave this bill without an appropriation of some amount. So gloves are off. Let's fight it out. Let's get a motion on the table for at least some level of funding for this study. Any motions on the table? Senator Kolb.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear the people that voted down the 250,000 and hear what they have to say. I mean, I think that's appropriate. I'd like to hear what the reason why, what they want to do. We got to put something out here.
Committee. Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we paid $300,000 in 2017 and we got a good report and some of it was followed because it was a good report, I assume now it's going to cost closer to $500,000 from a good reputable company. And that's why I suggested maybe an RFP, and then that will tell us where we are in November. If anybody even comes forward by then that can say they can do this kind of a report by then. That's why I mentioned that earlier. Thank you.
Brian, quick question for you. The $300,000 that you mentioned, that was for the entirety of the efficiency study, correct? That was an entire statewide efficiency study at 300,000. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's right. Now, the following year, I don't remember if it was in 18 or 19, there was another bill that followed up on the 2017 bill. That bill appropriated $10 million to an account. Mr. Chairman, haven't had time to review how that money was then allocated, but that's kind of the lay of the land.
Yeah, and that's so I'll just go ahead and explain my vote on the no. $300,000 did the efficiency study up front for the entire state. And now we're looking at doing just slightly less than that for one agency. And I feel like that's a lot of money, number one. But number two, I guess my biggest concern is I'm going to vote to put a number in here so we can at least have the discussion on the bill. So I guess I would move $100,000. And we have a second from Senator Kolb. And so open that up for discussion. We have $100,000 on the table. I'm just trying to pick a number here so we can at least have it a number to hold here and we can vote this bill up or vote this bill down. I truly don't care what the committee's pleasure is at this point, but we do need to have a monetary figure in this bill. So any further discussion on $100,000? Senator Pappas.
You know, I kind of agree with my friend here from the House. You know, just as well as I do, having worked on the school facilities, the minute you put a number out, all these companies are going to fit their scope of work to that budget. So I really think the way to get it is to put a scope of work together and then ask for requests for proposals. You know, certainly when we go out to bid on school projects, we try not let contractors know what kind of money we have, right? Because you know what the bids come in, exactly what you've appropriated. So you can put a number in, but I really agree with my friend that we really should develop a scope of work and then ask for companies to bid on it. Thank you.
Committee, any further discussion? All right, let's vote on the $100,000. All those in favor for $100,000, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no? That motion surprisingly passes. All right, committee, that moves us on over to the dates that we've discussed, ending that would revert back, and then the effective immediately upon this. So is there any further discussion and/or amendments to this bill? Yes, Chairman Boner, please.
Okay, well, Mr. Chairman, I think that it seems like there's a couple different things going on here. We have some discussion going on as to the best method of accomplishing this study. And, having not had much experience in, school CapCon or anything like that, RFPs, they don't send too many RFPs to sheep herders, as it turns out. So I'm just wondering what the path forward is here. I think we need to resolve this kind of more technical question here first. And, so how do we change the bill to accomplish what I think we heard the feedback was, which is we don't want to have, set the scope of work, then put an RFP out. What do we need to change in the bill to accomplish that?
Well, I think the discussion would actually, we would need an amendment that would change the bill to create an RFP process. And I think we'd probably need to put some language in there very similar to what we do with anything else, as far as I'm thinking school facilities as well, where we have stopped laying out how much money we have and for something and have people tell us. But that would then, I guess we would just direct the governor's office at this point to put this together and say they're authorized to do this, which they're already able to do if they wanted to. Brian, any thoughts?
Yeah. So Mr. Chairman, I don't know of anything that would prevent, the governor from doing that if funds were available, or funds were available for, through the B11 process. In terms of the bill, if the bill were to be changed into a bill that directs an RFP process, presumably there would not be an appropriation in this bill for that study. If that were the case, I think one consideration for the committee is how much further out then is the process being pushed, given that an RFP, if this bill became effective immediately, so March 2024, what that looks like for getting this done, and how the funding would work, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Boner, Chairman Boner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that clarifies it a little bit for me, because there is that B11 process. Just because we appropriate whatever it may be, $100,000 for this process does not necessarily mean that that's going to be the final amount. And maybe that's a relatively easy fix on section 2 there at the bottom of page 3. Yeah, sure, you have at least $100,000, but you can always transfer more and always, come back later to the legislature and ask for whatever the ultimate cost ends up being. And so perhaps that's the best way to move forward. We can always, give them a base amount to help out, but they're also recognizing that they can also transfer funds. They can do those sorts of things, and hopefully that, or like I said, in the context of a $9 billion general, or biennial budget, hopefully they can find, whatever it may be, another $100,000.
And Mr. Chairman, the other thing I would note, this isn't a bill for tomorrow concerning the feasibility studies for the Cowboy Challenge Academy, but there is language in that bill draft, if this is a 24 LSO 88, that just notes, and taken from our typical state capital construction bill, it just says the amount appropriated is not intended to provide a maximum amount and is not construed as an entitlement or guaranteed amount. And that's for purposes of that study. That could be language that could be added to this bill if the committee desires.
Make that motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Senator Kolb. Any discussion on that? I think everybody understands that one. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. you all be so excited to vote next time. All right, committee, anything further? Yes, Senator Boner.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm for the bill draft. I think it's important that this committee do its due diligence. I understand that there's a lot of, dynamic times at YDOT. But if things are the way we hear they are, then this report would add some outside verification that things are going well at YDOT. They're on the right track. All these things that you saw in the 30-page report have continued, and hopefully they have a few updates in the past 7 years to add to those efficiencies. And it's especially since there's other bills here talking about raising revenue. You're talking about the $400 million deficit. I know certainly I would have to justify, if I were ever to consider just straight up revenue enhancement, that I'd have to have something like this in hand to justify to my constituents, because I would never even consider a straight up fuel tax increase or even diverting severance taxes until we have something like this. And so I think there is a logical process here, and something that I don't think we should shy away from. So hopefully we can at least move this on to the session.
Okay, Senator Pappas.
I'll be a no vote on this. And the reason why is I would have been an okay vote if we didn't put the amount in. I guess my intent for actually doing an RFP bill this year, letting that RFP process happen next year, selecting the contractor and coming back, then that would give us that 1 year that I was seeking for the department and for the new director, to implement everything. And I understand Senator Kolb's thoughts about the past, and I'm not talking about wagon trail days. The past is immediate past, okay? Policies are changing right now. So it's dynamic, as our chairman of the Transportation Committee says, we're changing a lot of things right now. And so if we bring in a consultant right now to do this, it's in the middle of a very fluid dynamic. I don't know that we're going to get any good data. That's my fear. And so by going through an RFP process, it slows it down a bit, I know, kicks it into another year. Yeah, we might not get it till year 8 instead of year 7. But the director will have a year under his belt. Things will be static again. And so that was okay by me. I would agree to a bill that would create an RFP process. But to go ahead and do that now is why I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think you got to get a little bit of perspective on this from my point of view, a little wider look. We're talking about an organization that's almost $2 billion in a biennium, $2 billion. We have a huge amount of folks in the state of Wyoming that, frankly, for a lot of reasons, wonder what the heck's going on with YDOT. I think because it's such a big organization and it touches everybody, from snow plowing the roads to how the road maintenance is done. I think for the sake of the public and for the legislative body is part of, is that we need to have third-party transparency. It's not about waiting for how many years. I just want to delay it because I like Director Westby. I think he's capable and doing a good job. But I believe all these things that we're talking about will aid the director and YDOT in doing even a better job, or at least it's worth spending the money to find out that we're doing it correctly, if that's what it is. But I think anytime you're afraid of an outside agency coming in, that to me is a red flag. And I think everybody can think about that and go, yeah, I agree with that. But I think in this case, when we spend a little bit of money to verify what we're going on in such a large organization that impacts the entire state of Wyoming and commerce in the state of Wyoming, I think it's money well spent. So I'm on and for the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Let's go ahead. We just want to go down line by line. Everybody tell us what they're going to vote. Might not be a bad idea. Representative Obermueller, you've been very quiet today. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be voting no on this. It's not a $2 billion agency. It's an agency that administers roughly those kind of dollars. When you look at the agency itself and what actually happens internally with Wyoming, you need to study the audited financial statement of WYDOT. We haven't even looked at the information to see even how many dollars we're talking about that involves the administration and the costs and the positions. And so unless you're sitting there now and you know how much has actually been spent on administration, their salaries, and the actual costs of running, as opposed to program dollars, if you don't know how that sorts out, you should vote no today and wait until we have more of a presentation of why there is a concern about the dollars that are spent on WYDOT employment and costs of running their agency. So I'd encourage you to vote no today. Thank you.
Okay, let's go back this way. There was somebody over here. Representative Pendergraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did read the bill. My impression was that during the general discussion, it was considered that maybe this come from another fund. But anyway, that as an aside. Come back to me, please. Thank you.
Anybody else that hasn't had their chance to speak their mind on this bill? Okay, we're back to you, Representative Pendergraft. Yes, okay, we're going to give you a break.
No, I didn't have $100,000, but I did go out and I spoke to a number of WYDOT employees on the front lines, snowplow drivers, others. And to a person, they described frustration and confusion. And I just think it would be a good idea to pay somebody to go out there and talk to some of these people, because a lot of what they're feeling may not necessarily be even aware. You know, people see things on the front lines, but they don't pass them up. And I think that's part of what Representative Smith was going to. And I'll give you one very brief example. One snowplow driver was sent from Sheridan down to I-80. He gets to Rollins and he's headed west. And they said, the people that met him there said, when you get to the next bunch of trucks, turn a couple of them back. We're going to send them north. And he said, I just came from there. Why don't I just go north now? Oh, this is just anecdotal. I didn't have the chance to research it and try to figure out all of the details. But this particular driver, who had been with the department for a long time, just said it was kind of a fustercluck.
Whoa, let's absolutely not use language
I
anywhere.
didn't say any, I didn't use bad
We
terminology.
understood the implication. Let's make sure we're not, your title is honorable. Let's make sure we hold that title. Yes, Senator Brennan.
Thank you. I just have one question, because I feel like maybe we're on several different pages. What is our end goal if we are to pass this and have this audit done? I feel like I've heard several different things thrown out as to what the end goal would be. And I guess if I want to know what our end goal is before I could vote yes on this.
Senator, I would say the only thing that I can tell you from the bill's perspective is just looking at the scope of work, what we would receive by this time next year, and we would utilize is any recommendations that they find for efficiencies and or changes in the way that maybe even we have tasked them in statute to do something. It would allow us to either appropriate money to change things at the department and or may even, cause us to change statute to limit roadblocks or whatever that case may be. But this study would ultimately be looking for those efficiencies up front, and then it would give us that opportunity to address those legislatively if needed next year.
Thanks. I think you helped just kind of clarify what the point was there's a lot of stuff running around.
I think we have really kicked a few dead horses today, but that's okay. Representative Berger.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and are we, if we do this efficiency study, are we looking at the way we spend in this department, or the way we're working with our people and how we're being HR in the department? And is that our job to tell the good director how to manage his people? And what I want from an efficiency study, or what I want from our director, is support him. And how do we advocate for his goals, and how do we advocate back to our constituents and the people of Wyoming that are hearing there's so many rumors or whatever. Some are rumors, some are facts, some are right there. How do we advocate for him? You know, because there's so many ideas that this is why I-80 is closed. It's not because of the wind, sometimes I hear, it's because we don't have a piece of equipment. Well, if we don't have a piece of equipment, I think and we absolutely need it, and our good director is saying we need a piece of equipment to keep of course we're gonna support him. But anyways, is that what the efficiency study does? Because I don't think we need to look at what we're spending. I mean, maybe we just need to support our good director and advocate for him and his group and lead those our plow drivers and them. Go talk to your leaders. Go support your director. It's, we're trying to change that. Anyways, and then as far as the efficiency, and maybe I'm going to ask our director, can we look into our private industries or towing companies? Can we look into that? Can we hear that? I don't want an efficiency study to tell me that we need to have someone tell us that we have to tell our director to go talk to the towing companies. I don't know what's going on there. I have zero idea. I've heard some stuff, but
Representative Berger,
hopefully
I'm
we'll-
going to ask you to
Anyways,
tighten it up.
Thank you.
Okay. Committee, we have talked about this far long enough. I am going to cut comment off. We're going to move to a vote on this. So all those, actually, this is a roll call vote. So please use your microphones as well. So everybody out in the ether can actually hear this. Heather, please.
Senator Brennan,
No.
Senator Furphy,
No.
Senator Kolb,
Yes. Aye.
Senator Pappas, Representative Berger,
No.
Representative Nemec,
No.
Representative Obermueller,
No.
Representative O'Hearn,
No.
Representative Pendergraft,
Aye.
Representative Smith,
No.
Representative Stivar,
No.
Representative Wiley,
No.
Co-Chairman Boner.
Aye.
Chairman Brown.
No.
That failed.
Okay. Committee, we are very, very behind. And instead of taking a break, I'm just going to ask committee, if you need to go to the restroom, need to get some water, stretch your legs, whatever, please feel free to do so. However, we need to maintain quorum, but we are going to muddle right through the rest of this as efficiently as possible. We need an efficiency study on this committee and my chairmanship, so. All right, that moves us on to I-80, Bill Draft 24 LSO 85, light and high-profile vehicle closures. Talise, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hansen, LSO. I'm presenting Bill Draft 24 LSO 85 on light and high-profile vehicle closures. This bill draft creates a penalty for violating signs and markers for closures to light and high-profile vehicles and requires that the fines imposed to be paid by the driver of the vehicle at the time of the violation. So subsection D states that any person who willfully fails to observe any sign, marker, warning, notice, or direction placed or given under Wyoming Statute 24-1108 for closure to light and high-profile vehicles is guilty of a misdemeanor and upon conviction shall be subject to a fine of not more than $750, imprisonment for not more than 30 days, or both. It also provides that the driver of the light and high-profile vehicle at the time of the violation of this subsection shall be liable upon conviction for any fine imposed. The staff comment on page 3 highlights that the committee may wish to consider whether the bill draft should expressly state that the driver of the vehicle shall be liable for the fines, as there are no other similar instances in the Wyoming statutes where we directly say that. The staff comment also highlights that the committee may wish to consider whether to include a definition of light and high-profile vehicle or give YDOT rulemaking authority to define light and high-profile vehicle. For a definition, the committee could consider the weight, dimensions, and proportions of a vehicle. The staff comment mentions that to LSO's knowledge, no other state statute defines a light and high-profile vehicle. The staff comment also notes that the committee may wish to consider whether to increase the penalty. The penalty of $750 or imprisonment for a period of not more than 30 days mirrors the penalty imposed under subsection A, which is the subsection that covers if any person who willfully fails to observe any sign, marker, or notice, any of those is guilty of a misdemeanor, and that has the same penalty. So I'll stand for questions.
Talise, my only question really quickly is, I guess, looking at subsection A kind of already covers this. I mean, if I'm looking at this and as I was reading this, we're really just repeating ourselves in subsection D by just saying light and high profile vehicles. I believe, if I'm not understanding this correctly, please correct me, but this same information could just already be enforced. Am I understanding that incorrectly?
No, that it should already be covered under A. The direction of the committee was to create a specific penalty for specifically light and high profile vehicles. They didn't give any other direction on the fine or anything like that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Chairman Boner.
Yeah, so the difference here is the fine being directed at the individual, right? So that's a noticeable difference right now, and obviously be a very easy amendment to increase the fine if we really need to. So I think that there is a distinction there, I would say.
Well, and Co-Chairman, the only thing that I see here is we don't actually say that in here, and that's something that we would need to add in there. My only concern about doing that is what we were trying to get around is, in some cases, we were hearing anecdotally that some of these companies are saying, go ahead and go through, and if you get fined, we'll pay it for you. If we still fine the individual, the company can still reimburse them on their check or do whatever, that the individual is still responsible for it, but it's not going to change the effect of what our law states. And so I'm not sure that we can really have an enforcement mechanism to say that this shall not be refundable by the employer. Any thoughts on that, Talise?
Mr. Chairman, so to Co-Chairman Boner's point, there is an added sentence at the bottom of section D that says specifically that the driver at the time of the violation is liable for the fine. So that is different than subsection A. But to your notice, I'm not quite sure how there would be a sort of enforcement measure. You can say that they shall pay it, but I'm not sure how anyone will enforce that, but.
And I guess that's my whole point with this. I'll kind of shut my mouth for a second here. Committee, is there any discussions for Talise on the bill draft? Yes, Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question about the fines. I don't obviously know all the fines, but is this similar to driving on a closed road fine? Like the blow over fine? Would that be the same consequence?
Yes, as drafted, it's the same fine.
That's what subsection A is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Committee, any further questions for Talise? Okay. Director, we'll try not to keep you up here for an hour and a half on this bill too, so. This one's fairly straightforward.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And this discussion brought up a whole lot of information out of the last conversation or out of the last meeting. We submitted in your packet kind of a lot of the information on how we market, how we try to get the information out to people. There's a lot of information on their data about the interstate blowovers on I-80, as well as broken out statewide. There's also a really cool map that kind of, well, I wouldn't call it cool, I'm sorry. Kind of eye-opening map that shows you where all the blowovers were, and it breaks it down a little bit more. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the team here to kind of talk about an innovative way for us to try to maximize the opportunity for open roads versus closing them due to the wind. And I really want to take my hat off and applaud the crew here for being innovative on how to take a bunch of data, not manipulate it, but analyze it and put it into an algorithm to a way that can help describe something that is very hard to describe and define. What is a light and high profile? Well, there's so many variables that I'm already going to probably stop and let him, because we're behind times, but I'd like to introduce the crew here and let them go through this presentation as quick as possible, so give you the information you need.
Okay, please introduce yourself for the record, and feel free to go ahead when you're ready.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Vince Garcia. I'm with the GIS, ITS, and TMC program at WYDOT. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of explain to you what we are going to be doing in the coming months to try to address these blowovers that are happening so frequently. So I'm going to talk to you to begin with about the background. I'm going to give you some background information. I'm going to talk to you about why high wind blowovers are increasing. I'm going to talk to you about some research that the University of Wyoming has done entitled Characterization of Blowover Risk in the Wyoming Highway System. I'm going to talk about some proposed changes that we are going to make to our pre-trip, roadside, and in-vehicle information systems. And I'm going to just touch on a timeline. So some background. How do we alert drivers? I think this is kind of in the way. Can I get that out of the way? No, it's not, just for me. And this isn't just about high wind events. We use a number of systems to alert drivers to all kinds of conditions. We use our pre-trip information systems. These include the website, a commercial vehicle operator portal. We have a 511 phone system. We have text and email alerts that we provide to the public. We have a mobile app. We have the YouTube video forecasts that Day Weather provides for us. And then our public affairs people use social media to get the word out. In terms of roadside information systems, we use dynamic message signs. Those are the electronic message boards that you've all seen. We use variable speed limit systems, highway advisory radios, road weather information systems. Those are really the environmental sensors that you see on the roadway as well. And then most recently, we've been deploying in-vehicle information systems. Through our Connected Vehicle project, we've developed a very cool product using Tri-Hydro out of Laramie as a company who's providing this information, not only for us, but for other states. We're looking to create a one-stop shop where states can push the information to one location and third parties such as Google, TomTom, SiriusXM can consume the information and provide it to their in-vehicle information systems as well. So I'm going to give you some pre-trip statistics. These are for the calendar year of 2022. I know you've seen these in your handouts. I suspect that these would probably surprise you if I hit you with these cold. But our text and email alerting system, we have 118,000 subscribers in 2022. Last year, we delivered 31 million text messages. That's not just text messages, that's also email messages. Let me continue. Our website, last year in 2022, received 2.2 billion hits. Our 511 phone system received 250,000 phone calls. That's actually down from our peak. In years past where we didn't have as mature of information systems, the phone calls were quite a bit more prominent. We peaked at about 1.9 million phone calls per year. We have the commercial vehicle operator portal. This is a product that we provide forecasting information to commercial vehicle operators on commonly traveled commercial routes. We provide very important information to them. We work with the Trucking Association as well as some trucking companies to get that information to them. We have about 2,600 registered users. Those you can anticipate are like companies. They have dispatch centers that can get information to their drivers as kind of a force multiplier. And then we have a mobile app. The mobile app has 530,000 unique users. There are more downloads than that, but we're very unique. These numbers are very, very large, and I don't know that there's any state in the country that can really compare to these. And obviously, it's due to the weather conditions that we have. Roadside statistics. We have 162 dynamic message signs. Last year, we provided about 129,000, almost 130,000 updates on those signs. We have 218 variable speed limit signs at 125 sites. Last year, we did about 43,000 speed limit changes. We have 97 environmental sensors. Those are the road weather information systems. Just as an interesting stat, last year at Deerhaven, we reached a temperature of negative 43.6. Just tossed an interesting stat there for you. We have webcams. We have 224 of those. And last year, we collected 126 million images that we provided to the public. We stored about 14 terabytes of data per year, and we record those so that they can be used for historical purposes. We did about 214,000 condition reports from our plow operators, and in some cases from the citizens. And in 2011, I kind of just want to point this out, that was the first time after some research that we did in-house where we started doing this concept of closures to light high-profile vehicles. So in terms of a definition for a light high-profile vehicle, I like it's not a joke, but it is somewhat tongue-in-cheek when we say we all know when we see them because they're basically on their side. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to define what a light high-profile vehicle is, because when people are asking us to define them, what they really are asking for us is to tell them what type of vehicle is going to blow over. And it's very complex. The loading and the weight of the vehicle factors in. Not only the center of gravity of the vehicle can be high, it can also be lateral. It can be left and right of the centroid of the vehicle. The wind gust, the wind direction, the roadway geometry, the road surface condition, the vehicle's speed, the shape of the vehicle, and the driver's experience all play into whether a vehicle is going to be prone to blow over. This is not an exhaustive list, but it's a pretty good list to tell you just how complex it is and why it's difficult for us to define.
Representative Berger?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, question. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you explained to us that what I see is we're doing a great job of getting information about our weather out there, right? So the disconnect maybe isn't about whether our weather is bad. These right here, this slide is telling us why these rollovers or these blowovers could be happening. It's not because we're not getting the information out. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I do think that's a fair assessment.
Okay.
I would state it a little bit differently. I would say that we are able to get the information out, but the reality is in some cases we may be over stressing it. We may be targeting too many vehicles. And as a result of this, I think you're going to see where we're going to be targeting very specific weights of vehicles.
Just in the essence of time, and just because we have been sitting up here for a little while, if I can have you hit, instead of going line by line through your slideshow, and not to discount the amounting work that you have done, the biggest thing is I expect the committee that they have reviewed all this as well.
Okay.
What I would really like to do is really focus in on the proposed changes and what you guys are doing already, and whether or not the bill draft that we have created at this point is going to affect anything at this point.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we'll jump right to the proposed changes. The university has done some great research for us, and we are going to take their research and turn it into an operational system. We're going to use our current capabilities, so we're not asking for additional capabilities, but we're going to use our pre-trip, our roadside, and our in-vehicle information systems to make this information directly to the drivers. We'll create an operational pre-event system to provide expected wind closures. This is going to be based on forecast information. We'll add information to our commercial vehicle operator portal that will create an option for a driver to self-evaluate the blowover risk based on their vehicle. will show windows of opportunity for the driver to get through difficult zones. So we will provide some information directly to the drivers in forecast level information that will tell them, we expect the road to be closed to this weight of a vehicle at this particular time in 3-hour increments for up to 24 hours. We'll update all of our pre-trip information systems, our in-vehicle information systems, and our pre-event. We'll also provide pre-event information through video forecasts as well as better social media posts. And then we'll also create an operational system to help improve enforcement. And I'd almost turn that enforcement into somewhat self-enforcement, as well as making it such that our troopers can make a defined statement that this person has violated the law. We'll use our dynamic message signs. Again, those are the overhead signs and the side-mounted signs. We'll push information to our ports of entry to clearly target the weights of vehicles. No longer are we going to be doing general closures to light high-profile vehicles. They're a little bit nebulous. We're going to be doing closures to specific weights of vehicles. And then we'll create an operational system for the driver to self-assess against the current wind. Where and why? We're going to implement these only on interstates to begin with. And the reason for that is we have adequate density of dynamic message signs. In order to do a closure, you have to be able to inform the driver that the road is closed to them. And then we also have the environmental sensors necessary to analyze the wind. Further, interstates, because they are basically major corridors for commercial vehicles, there's greater numbers of trucks, so we have greater opportunities for blowovers. We're going to close the roads based on the worst case segment, the worst case information within a segment. And we're going to hold people at major communities because these are decision points, as well as those are places of refuge. Those are places where the driver can get fuel and food and the like. These places are also locations where we have adequate signage coming into the community as well as leaving the community.
We have a question here, Senator Culp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just quickly, how are you going to convey this information to said drivers? And I say this with the idea that not all of them are fluent in English. Are we using some sort of symbolism? I mean, what's your plan on doing a better job in conveying the information to said drivers?
Sir, Mr. Chairman, Senator, that's a difficult situation. We are going to be doing on our dynamic message signs, it's going to have to be English. We have done some analysis through our mobile app to determine what type of languages people are using, and the large majority of them are using English. There are a few that are, I shouldn't say a few, but there's probably about 20% that are using Spanish and a very small percentage using Russian. It's not as great of number of languages as I had anticipated based on our mobile app. We've reached out to the Trucking Association as well to determine if they have a better way to kind of get a metric on the different languages that are spoken. But our dynamic message signs, I must inform you, they are character-based. They do not have the current capability to do symbols. And that's the reason we're going to have to use English.
Okay, go ahead and continue.
This is the examples of some of the signs that we will post. And again, they'll be much more specific than just a general closure to light high-profile vehicles. We'll target the information, and again, it'll be for better messaging and enforcement. Unfortunately, it will have to be in English. We will state things such as the road is closed to high-profile vehicles under 30,000 pounds. We will use a second page on the dynamic message signs to say that the wind gust is currently exceeds 50 miles per hour or something like that. That's necessary for those vehicles that weigh over 30,000 pounds, so they know what they're getting themselves into. We worked at length with the Trucking Association. They've given us great feedback, and this is valuable to their drivers. The dynamic message sign messages will have to be somewhat conservative. Winds will change, they'll fluctuate, so we'll have to kind of estimate a little bit low in terms of what the vehicle that will blow over, the weight of the vehicle that is. And then we'll have to reduce the frequency of changing. We won't be able to just change this every time we see a difference in the environmental sensing. We'll probably do something like every hour, or probably possibly every hour and a half, to determine whether we can make an adjustment to whether the road is open to a specific weighted vehicle or not. We'll modify all of our other messaging systems. We'll have to take a look at wireroad.info. We'll have to eliminate the closures to light high-profile vehicles definition. We'll keep the extreme blowover definition. And the reason for that is they're basically the same, only we use the extreme blowover in locations where we don't have adequate signage in order to close the road. It's just a good indication for the driver that this is severe. But we don't have the authority to close the road based on the shortage of signs. We'll modify our map, the phone system, the text and email alerts, the mobile app, highway advisory radios, the situational data exchange. That's the framework that the Tri-Hydro people I mentioned are using to provide this to third parties. The information can get into other vehicles. And then we'll modify the commercial vehicle operator portal. We'll enhance video forecasts to indicate for the first time what class of vehicle we expect the road to be closed to. We'll create a specific review process. This will be an opportunity for a person to check their vehicle against the current condition as well as the forecast condition. We'll ask for the driver to provide us their USDOT number, their vehicle profile, whether they're a tanker, a box trailer, or a flatbed, something like that. We'll look for the vehicle weight, the route that they plan to travel, the person requesting permission, as well as their email and the driver. We want to make sure the driver gets the information.
Is this going to be vetted by your TMC team? Who's vetting this when it comes through your web portal?
Mr. Chairman, this will actually be all automated. We're going to be building a system that will do this.
Okay.
The commercial vehicle operators will have a direct link. It will be a new web application. They'll be able to basically put in this information and check it directly against their vehicle and get a response in a second or two. We will make it directly available in the commercial vehicle operator portal because those people have signed up and we want to make it prominent so they'll be able to use it very conveniently. The evaluation process is going to, in a very simplified format, will be if the vehicle is a flatbed or a tanker, they're going to get automatic authorization. They'll get that almost instantaneously, Mr. Chairman. If the vehicle is a tractor with a box trailer, we're going to first evaluate whether the vehicle is heavy enough for the current wind conditions. And then we're also going to evaluate if they are heavy enough for the forecasted condition for something like an hour and a half, something like that, so they get across the zone. If they are either too light for the current conditions or the forecasted conditions, we're going to record the information and we're going to send them an email that will tell them that they are not permitted to travel. If they are heavy enough for both the current condition and the forecasted condition, we'll record the information the same way. We'll give them a time-limited authorization. So we'll say you are authorized for the next 1 hour or something like that until a specific time. And then we'll inform the driver that they are traveling at their own risk. There are hazard conditions that may exist. We don't have sensors in every location where there are dangerous winds. So we'll have to do some approximations and we'll have to make them somewhat responsible for their own travel.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Question,
Representative
please.
Ahern.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if they meet A and B, they are told to travel at their own risk, and they still blow over, are they fined?
That's a great question. I don't.
And one other one, has a flatbed or tanker ever blown over?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, the flatbeds and tankers have blown over, but very, very rarely. I believe in the last 4 or 5 years, a tanker blew over 1 time and flatbeds maybe 1 or 2 times, but very, very small percentages. I don't know the answer to your question, whether the person will receive a fine or not. I think that's up to probably the troopers responding to those things and perhaps to legislators, sorry.
Senator Pappas?
Yes. Could you tell me, do we have an adequate number of environmental sensors, or does the system need to be expanded to
Mr.
better
Chairman,
give us
Senator-
data?
We definitely need some additional sensors. There are some locations where we are desperately in need of sensors. South Pass comes to mind right away. We have quite a few problems on South Pass, and in essence, we have 1 sensor to give us information for variable speed limits as well as the risk of blowover, and it's not adequate.
Follow up.
Follow up?
Yeah, is the department looking to provide a request for those in the next upcoming budget?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, absolutely. That's actually in the works.
Committee, I believe that the next click takes you through. So any other further questions on the information provided? Very, very good information, especially considering what we're trying to discuss here. So really appreciate that. Any further discussion and or questions for YDOT? Yes, Representative Berger?
I guess my question here now is do we see more blowovers from commercial vehicles opposed to a truck pulling a fifth wheel trailer?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, absolutely. The commercial vehicles, typically, if you saw the data that's provided by the highway safety, their commercial vehicles are prone to blow over, basically because they oftentimes are light, as well as they're oftentimes box trucks with a big sail. So they're a big target.
Representative Berger, if you go to the information that was provided in our packet, page 3 of 10 provides a very good breakdown of the classification of vehicles. Senator Kolb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question about the fines or the penalties for driving while the roads are obviously, according to maybe what you posted, hazardous. Do you think that those fine numbers are adequate enough to deter people from driving? Maybe it's a highway patrol question, but you have an opinion about something to improve the situation besides you saying don't do it and they do it and they blow over?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I absolutely do have an opinion. I think the fines are too low. I think that we could follow a model similar to what we do like in construction zones, or even the state of Colorado does in construction zone. If you go past a closure gate when you're told you are not permitted, I think fines should be double. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, Senator Pappas?
Yes, one more question on the type of load. Is there any further restriction on a hazardous load that maybe you might want to stop traveling even before you would, a load of furniture?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, that's a fantastic idea. I don't think we talked about that. I think we will soon.
Okay. Committee, anything further for YDOT? Just in an effort to move things along here, I really, really appreciate your guys' information. I believe our next section up is with Sheila.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Sheila Furch with the Wyoming Trucking Association. Following your May meeting, when you had the initial discussion about enhancing the fines for the driver and making it specific for the driver, I visited with our board of directors. Excuse me. They were pretty comfortable with that concept. They've not taken a position on this bill because they've not had a chance to review it. But ultimately, it is the driver's decision. We all hear the anecdotes where there might be pressure from the company, you're going no matter what, but ultimately it's the driver's decision to go. So I would want their input once this bill is finalized and we go forward. But just so you know that there was a fairly good comfort level with that discussion early on. I had a chance to see the presentation you just walked through with the YDOT team a couple of weeks ago. I'm very impressed. I think this will go a long ways to giving carriers and drivers a new tool to help them ultimately make that decision. Because I think what Mr. Garcia said was right. Sometimes there's so much information that they get overwhelmed, or they go through a state that's also given them information that high winds, be careful. Well, they get that in one state and they come to Wyoming and we're saying high winds. Okay, it's a little bit different on I-80 than it is from the state you just came through. And they don't know that. The ones that haven't driven here regularly, they don't know that it's going to be different driving through Utah or Nebraska and Wyoming. So I think the more tools we can give them, I'm very excited. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out and what impact it has on blowovers in the near future. Because I do think that it will be a good tool. My apologies to YDOT, I didn't get back to them on the language issue because the information I've received from the American Trucking Associations mirrors what they're finding out. The majority of drivers do understand English. The next language is Spanish, and then everything else is just a very small percent. That is a challenge when there is a language barrier, but I think if they can make the signs brief, to the point, those drivers will be able to capture what it is that they're trying to tell them.
Representative Berger?
I appreciate the comment on the language barrier because that's a common question from the people I represent along I-80 there in that corner, is that everybody, the perception is that not the majority are speaking English. And I think that's misinformation. It's an assumption. So somehow I would like to see, or how could we get that, how could we do better at relaying that information out to everyone in Wyoming?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I appreciate that comment because we get that a lot too. And, you know, federal regulations, which Wyoming and every other state has adopted, requires the driver to at least have an understanding of the English language. So there is that perception, and I think part of it is my personal opinion. Part of it is garnered when we see news reports and they're interviewing drivers at truck stops, and ultimately that's who they choose to interview, is the ones that have the language barrier. So there is that common perception out there. I am at a loss on how to combat that perception. It's certainly an industry issue at every level, and one that we're working on.
Follow-up?
Follow-up, Mr. Chairman, real quick. You said an understanding of English, not a proficiency of English. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman,
Sheila?
I may have misspoke. I don't remember exactly what the requirements say in FMCSA. I think it is more than just an understanding.
Representative Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you think it would help if YDOT actually, I know they post statistics about deaths on our roads across the state, if they did statistics on the dynamic boards of how many blowovers we had previous year and year to date? Do you think that would be beneficial for the drivers to know, oh, this is a serious thing here?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I don't think that's a bad idea. And I'm trying to remember if maybe last year they did post so many blowovers today, or so many blowovers this week, or something like that, because I think that is impactful. If I were a commercial vehicle driver and I knew the wind was out there blowing and I saw that sign going this many blowovers today, I'd certainly be paying attention to that.
I like the idea of posting how many tickets have been issued for violating the passes. Chairman Boner?
Well, along those lines, one of the decisions we have here today is amount of fine, as we discussed. As you discuss that with your members, obviously, you know, as it stands now, the bill isn't all that impactful. Would your members be okay with a higher fine, maybe even, you know, $2,000 or more? I mean, what's the discussion been like?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question as well. We did not discuss an actual amount, because when we talked about the discussion you guys had back in May, you said an enhanced fine.
Yep.
So I assumed it would be more than 750, but we didn't talk about an amount. So I don't know what their comfort level would be.
Okay. Yep, follow-up?
Just moving forward, if we, you know, regardless of what we decide here today, hopefully you understand that's something we want to work with your association with, and even if it ends up being not exactly to your liking, you know, after we vote, if that's what the committee does, you know, just know that we're willing to work with you, and we don't have the information, you don't have the feedback yet, but if we put a number in there, we sure as heck.
We will hear, yes. Senator Pappas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to that point, we've got a misdemeanor, right, at $750,000 in 30 days in here. My question, and maybe you can't answer this, Sheila, maybe Mr. Rossetti or somebody else could answer it. What does it do to the driver's license when they get a ticket? What impact does that have on them? I think that would be higher than the monetary amount. Does it restrict them from driving if they get, say, like the second violation, or I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I would certainly feel more comfortable with someone else answering that, because I know it varies. You know, there's some violations that go towards the driver's record. There's some violations that go toward a company's safety score, which is imperative to them because it affects their insurance rates. It affects their shippers that will do business with them. And that score is extremely important. So right off the top of my head, I can't answer that question
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Follow up?
I think that's where we ought to put the stick. You know, because I think monetary violations, you know, companies sometimes may figure that in their budget. But if it you know, if it affects a driver's license and that driver is now out of business, that company's lost a driver, and I know drivers are premium these days, or if the company's safety record is impaired somehow, maybe they'll change their tune. So that's my question on how it affects their licensure.
Senator Culp?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To follow up on that, I'm probably not the right person to ask, but is it careless, reckless? What type of ticket is this? You know, that would be a kind of dovetail on to what Senator Pappas was talking about. What is this?
Mr. Chairman, again, I don't know that answer.
I believe it's a moving violation, but we have the colonel back here and I think, okay, and I've actually got Misty shaking her head. So it's a moving violation, not necessarily anything else along those lines that you were just speaking of. So, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Why, is there some reason why we wouldn't want to make it a careless driving ticket or a reckless driving ticket when you were involved with something that in fact, in this case, would potentially close I-80 or whatever major thoroughfare we're talking about? Is that something on the table, or maybe it's not for this kind of violation?
That's a policy decision for us, Senator Kolb, is to decide what it is. And ultimately, as Sheila alluded to in our previous discussion, was we were talking about an enhanced penalty for something along these lines because we were seeing anecdotally or hearing and actually with some factual evidence too, that there are people that are just violating this, paying the $750 and then going along. So if we were to enhance that penalty, maybe it reduces the amount of these people coming through.
Got that, Chair. But so we got careless or reckless. What gives somebody who's a driver a second chance without being the end of the road for them? That's, I guess, my question.
Mr. Chairman, one thing I would want to caution, and again, I know there's more experts behind me, because FMCSA does have a list of what the violations are for drivers and carriers for what affects their safety ratings, what affects their drivers' records. So that may be something that we would have to refer to when we were talking about making it a change there, because there may be specific lists of certain violations and what qualifies as far as as far as the Federal Motor Carriers CDL program.
Senator Pappas?
Mr. Chairman, if we move this bill forward, could I request that we revisit it at the next meeting and ask YDOT to bring back all the information? Because I don't want to put them on the spot now. I really want some good information about what we can do to, you know, to enhance the stick rather than just money. And so,
Yeah, I think we can absolutely do that once we get through a little bit more. And I do believe, Misty, if you are interested in testifying, you're more than welcome to come up. Sheila, we'll let you continue before Misty comes on if you have anything else.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing else unless there's more questions.
Okay, Misty, if you'd like to join us. Thank you, Sheila.
Good afternoon, Committee Chairman Brown, Co-Chairman. My name is Misty Zimmerman. I'm the Program Manager for Driver Services. So just in a couple of answers to the questions that you had, it's really like Chairman Brown said, a policy decision on what that would look like. So Sheila is correct. There are certain specific citations that do cause disqualification on a commercial driver's license. And a lot of that, careless driving, reckless driving, those types of things can be decided at the state level on what is careless driving. So we can look at that policy and decide that and determine if a driver is in violation of whatever statute, it will be considered a careless or reckless driving. So that gives us that ability. Currently, right now, it's a moving violation. Sorry. And right now, there's no disqualification associated with the moving violation. It's only suspension action, and that's 4 moving violations in 12 months.
So we could say that this could count as 5. Just hit them with 5 different violations and then we get it, right?
I think where this discussion leads and lends yourself to is a suspension is one thing, a suspension of your driving privileges is one thing, But it's really that commercial disqualification and what you're looking at, the impact and the seriousness there.
I'm just thinking out loud, committee. I'm thinking that if we were to add on, I like the increase in fines, but I also like the idea of, if you are caught with this twice, you're disqualified from driving in this state. It's something that we restrict that permitting process through here, but those are the types of things that I think we're trying, as I was talking with Chairman Boner on this process, we're trying multiple ways to fix. I-80 is probably the biggest one. We see it certainly at Bordeaux on I-25 and a few here and there up on I-90. But when you sit there and think about, if we can't keep I-80 open, it's not just the weather. It's these blowovers and these pileups and stuff like that. And when it boils down to it, maybe we have some enhanced penalties to fix this. But Senator Kolb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree. The question is, do we call them, certainly careless driving? I mean, I don't know if you disagree with that. It'd be certainly careless. And at the very, can there be a statutory change that says if you have 2 careless driving violations for blowovers that you're suspended or you lose your ability to drive with the CDL in the state of Wyoming?
Ms. Zimmerman?
Chairman Brown, Senator Kolb, 317-305 outlines what the state is allowable to disqualify a driver for. So we do have that authority in our statute. It does mirror, for the most part, what our federal regulations state. So we do have that disqualification authority. We've talked it through this committee before when we were talking about severe forms of human trafficking and adding things to that to match federal regulations. So that is outlined currently in Wyoming statute.
Committee, any further questions for Ms. Zimmerman? Thank you, by the way. Thank you so much. Seeing nothing, you can go. No, sit down. No, I'm just kidding. All right, we're getting late here. We're getting slap happy. All right, committee, any other discussion with the committee itself, and then we'll open this up for public comment. Okay, public comment then. Anybody want to testify on this bill as it stands? Seeing nobody rushing, do we have anybody online? Okay, we have nothing. So back up to the dais here. Committee, what is your pleasure? Moved by O'Hearn, seconded by Nemec. Committee, let's briefly walk through this bill since it's a fairly simple bill, very small. Starting out page 1, no real issues here. Page 2. Again, really the language that we're adding here down below is just the information of the driver of the light and high-profile vehicle at the time of the violation of this subsection shall be liable upon conviction for any fine imposed under this subsection. I'm going to propose an amendment here, and I would say, and I just got Talisa's email. I was emailing her as we were going through this. I am going to propose the following amendment on line 17. Insert the word high right before misdemeanor. So this would be a high misdemeanor. And then on line 18, I would strike the language of not more than $750. And I would insert that with $2,500 after the comma, and it would then say, and not more than. So the fine would be subject to a fine of $2,500 and not more than imprisonment for more than 1 year, or 30 days, sorry. So that's my amendment.
Second.
Seconded by Stivar. I saw the hand go up. So any discussion? Okay, yes. Good when the attorneys have questions.
So Mr. Chairman, not a question, more of a comment. I'm not sure the word high misdemeanor is necessary. That is a concept that is used sparingly throughout statutes, but mostly in the game and fish statutes to differentiate between the penalties that are available for specified game and fish offenses. So certainly the amount of fine, the misdemeanor distinction is really the amount of imprisonment time.
Okay.
So the fine can be, that's a matter of policy.
Okay, so I'm going to amend as long as the second is okay with it, we'll get rid of the word high. We'll just keep misdemeanor. Second, are you okay with that? Okay, all right. Committee, no discussion on that. So again, this would be a $2,500 fine that would be required and the potential of up to 30 days in prison. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no? Okay, that passes. Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to figure out where to put in, if they go through the CVOP, the user direct link, where they've contacted and been in contact with YDOT, if they've been approved to go ahead and the wind changes for some stupid reason, like it sometimes does, and they have a blowover, what happens to that guy in that company? I would like to have that in this language somewhere, that if they've gone through that operation where they've gotten the go-ahead, they have been informed of the driver risk, but life is risk. And you do stuff and you take the chance and you're a good driver and you haven't had an accident in 15 years and you've driven on these roads forever in these weather conditions and the weather changes, I don't think he should be fined $2,500 and put in jail for a year and a half.
Okay, let's go to Senator Pappas and then Chairman Boner.
I actually don't think that really needs to be in there, because the bill is for any person who willfully fails to observe the sign and marker. So he's given permission, so he didn't willfully. So if there's a blowover and he's been given permission to go, I think he's good to go, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, Chairman Boner and then Representative Stiver.
Right, and along those lines, I just say that, White House does really good work, important work in having a very clear definition of what is light, high profile, which is the other important part of this discussion. So if that individual goes and he didn't meet the criteria and blows over anyways, then he should be okay. It's my understanding. And so, I think that, that clear communication that we heard about and their plan is absolutely vital. And this is the other half of having enforcement. I think they go together. And I don't think we need a bill to, I would severely advise against trying to get into too much technical detail in the statute. That'd be a mistake.
Agreed. Representative Stivar and then over to Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For Representative O'Hearn, do we need to change willfully to knowingly?
Not messing. I actually almost made the amendment to just strike it. So no, we're not going down that road. We're not doing that. Senator Kolb.
Mr. Chairman, I also like to point out that if someone had this situation come about, they would obviously challenge it in court, and the judge would be the ultimate decider of said things.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yep. Okay, committee, anything further? Yes, Senator Pappas and then Chairman Boner again.
I do, I'll be a yes vote on this for sure, but I do want to reserve the right to bring it back to deal with the bigger stick that we talked about. I think just because we got a monetary amount here, I think we need to look into the ability to suspend, revoke, or whatever, a license for a second violation, or whatever that looks like. But I think that really needs to happen.
So what I would say is there is a motion on the floor right now to sponsor. And so that would require us to vote down the sponsorship of this bill and then redo it. Or there's the potential to have somebody lay this back until the next meeting. Chairman Boner.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we could have a motion just to lay it back to the next meeting and that'd be it. But along those lines, I think we did hear from YDOT that, 31-7-05 is exactly where we could put that. And I think that, I can just read it to the committee if that helps. It says any person is disqualified from driving a commercial motor vehicle for a period of not less than 1 year if convicted of a first violation arising from separate incidents of. Then you have, let's see, 9 different Roman Ns, and it's a laundry list of things that you can do to get suspended for a year as a commercial driver. It includes, using a motor vehicle in commission of a felony, knowing and willingly leaving a scene of an accident, refusal to submit to a test to determine alcohol concentration while driving a commercial vehicle. So that'd be something that we'd be adding to the list. Right, this would be number 10. Yep. So maybe.
I second that.
It's Okay, well, I'm just saying, if you want to have that discussion now, you can offer an amendment, and that's where we go. And I feel pretty confident that, that's hopefully simple enough to achieve the policy objectives.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that.
Okay. Seconded by Kolb. Talise, Brian, you guys good with that? Good. Question.
Hopefully that's correct.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify then, it would be a first violation of this high-profile closure that would potentially subject that person to a
I was going to
suspension.
say, it is a may in the language, correct, Chairman?
No, it is.
Yeah, it is a shall.
No, it says any person is disqualified.
Okay.
So it operates as a shall.
Okay.
and
So this would really make that be the stick that we're talking about. Yep. Okay. Committee, any further discussion? We have a motion and a second to include this as a disqualification for 1 year in the state of Wyoming on their CDL license. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no? Okay. Committee, anything further? Okay, call for question. Heather, if you'd please call roll.
Senator Brennan. Senator Furphy. Senator Kolb.
Aye.
Senator Pappas. Representative Berger. Representative Nemec.
Aye.
Representative Obermueller.
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn.
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft.
Aye.
Representative Smith.
Aye.
Representative Stivar.
Aye.
Representative Wiley.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Boner.
Aye.
Chairman Brown.
Aye.
That passes.
Okay, let's make that one a Senate file since we've already got one of the House. We'll just, you want to do that? Yeah, we could do that. So let's actually keep that open. We know that the other one has to originate in the House. So yeah, let's hold off on that. We'll wait. All right, committee, thank you for your work on that. We're only 2 hours behind schedule. So again, an efficiency study on my chairmanship abilities would have been great. CDL issues, Bill Draft 24 LSO 87. Talise, looks like you're up again.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hansen.
Oh, whoa, yes, I'm sorry, we have Adopt a Highway. I totally missed that. I am so sorry, Talise. Again,
He's trying to be efficient.
I am trying to be efficient, yes, but I'm just skipping things. Mr. Dehoff, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Brown and commissioners. I will make this short. I want to give you an update on the Adopt a Highway program. After the last meeting, we did get all the troops together, and we did do a look at all our signs out there, and we did find out that we were behind, and we are starting to correct those. And Chairman Boner, we did correct the 400th Missile Squadron sign that was taken down in July, so we appreciate that. But I can tell you that we do use our volunteer programs out there and our civic programs to help us out with the litter control. It does help our guys out there. You do know that most of the litter that we see is around the metropolitan areas or towns and cities, truck parking, and our rest areas. And we do make that part of our work program. It is the third highest task that we do from a dollar standpoint for maintenance. So I can tell you, if the civic program or the volunteer program does not pick up the trash or they're not able to do it, we do make that part of our work program with our maintenance guys out there. We do prioritize, especially after the spring, and we did mention this the last time. When the snow melts, you will see a lot of trash. We know that. But also what comes during that year is the potholes, the down fence, and the down signs, and then we do get to the litter. So we do appreciate, being a little patient on that. We do go to outside sources. We'll use workforce services at communities. I've even heard that we've used inmates to help us out with that. So that is my update. I did have a sheet here that gave you some information. If there's any questions on that, I'm here to answer that.
So you're saying there's lots of yellow bottles in the median after the snow melts?
Yes.
All right. Yes, Chairman Boner?
It's just make sure I understand this correctly. It looks like number of center lines adopted, that's over 2,200 miles. Number of center lines cleaned, that's 758. So that's about a third, little less of, so you have 2/3 of the groups who are adopting, not quitting. Is that the correct way of understanding that?
Mr. Diop?
Chairman, through you, yes, that is correct. In 2022, that is the data that I went out and collected for you. That's what happened in 2022. I can tell you it's probably picking back up. We did see a decline during COVID because there was a lot of concerns of people being together. So that's where we need to contact and make sure we have good contacts and see if we can encourage them to do that twice a year.
Yep, follow up.
And so what's the process? Obviously, it took 15 years to take down one sign and say it's, up for adoption. What's the process and how long do you wait until after a group doesn't fulfill their obligations? I understand it's all volunteer. You don't want to be too stringent, but at what point do you say this is no longer adopted by this particular group if they're not doing the work? What's that process look like?
Mr. Diop?
Chairman, through you, Chairman Boner, again, we require them to pick up 2 times a year. We may give them a strike 1 or strike 2, and if we can't even get a hold of them, we'll go ahead and take that sign down and say that that section's available. I can't tell you exactly what happened with the 400th Missile Squadron, if that was just an oversight, or if we needed to maybe step it up a little bit and do better on contacting the groups and taking those signs down.
Okay, follow up?
Sorry.
No, you're good.
I'm looking at the difference in the data. I'm not talking about an anecdote. I'm talking about the data you provided us. And it looks like, I said, 2/3 of the groups are not fulfilling this obligation. And so it's more than just one sign north of Cheyenne. It looks like it's the vast majority of these adopted highways, which are not in fact adopted in practice. And so it seems to me that, this program's not functioning very well. And I'm wondering, the obvious answer is if they're not fulfilling the obligations, it's up for adoption by somebody else. So I'm just wondering what that process is. It seems like we got a much bigger problem than 1 or 2 signs I happen to notice.
Chairman, through you, again, Chairman Boner, I'd reassure you that we are looking into the sections that are adopted out there. And we will it does say if they have a strike 1 that we should probably take it down, but we do give them maybe a strike 1 and then do the strike 2, and then we should take that down. We are going to improve that process and follow through with that.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay. Senator Culp? You're good? Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How much does the sign cost for you to put up? And does the group have any skin in the game? Thank you.
Mr. Diop?
Mr. Chairman, through you, Representative O'Hearn, we do pay for the cost of the sign. It is for a volunteer group, and the time that they put out there, I think, is more than what that sign is worth. I would say a sign costs between $500 to $1,000 to make it and install it.
All right. Looks like you're good. Thank you, Mr. Diop. Do appreciate that. All right, committee, I've got us nowhere near back on track. Don't get yourself fooled there. Public comment on this. Yes. Not seeing any public comment on this, which does mean we can move into our last agenda item. Talise, when you are ready, we are ready for you to take us through the CDL bill.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hansen, LSO. I'm presenting Bill Draft 24 LSO 87 on commercial driver license medical certificate downgrade. This bill draft imposes a time period for the Department of Transportation to downgrade a commercial driver's license and requires the Department of Transportation to reinstate commercial driver's license that were previously downgraded. So the first sentence in subsection O with the new language would read, a person may be disqualified from driving a commercial motor vehicle, or the department may downgrade a person's commercial driver's license to a non-commercial driver's license if the person fails to provide a current federal medical qualification certificate within 60 days after the expiration of a current medical qualification certificate. This bill draft strikes when requested by the department and inserts that time period of 60 days. The bill draft then adds a second sentence that states that the department shall reinstate a commercial driver's license that was previously downgraded under this subsection without requiring the person to take the knowledge and driving test under Wyoming statute 31/7/114 upon the person providing a current federal medical qualification certificate before the original expiration date of the commercial driver's license. Section 2 requires the Department of Transportation to promulgate any rules, and Section 3 provides a split effective date. So I'll stand for questions.
Committee, any questions for Ms. Hanson? Talise, thank you very much. This looks like this was one of the simpler bills. Poor Brian got stuck with the 16-page bill and a few of the others, so you got the couple easy ones, so. All right. Taylor, you have been sitting in the wings all day, just chomping at the bit, man. Welcome. Ms. Zimmerman, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Taylor Rossetti, Support Services Administrator for WYDOT. If you'd give me a little bit of latitude, I would like to step back and correct some information that we gave you guys at the May meeting.
Certainly.
Committee, we do try to always come before you guys as professionals. Part of that, I think, is we've got to own it when we maybe say something we maybe shouldn't have said, or we say something that maybe we find after the fact is wrong. We did have a lengthy discussion about the possibility of issuing commercial driver's licenses to individuals who are between the ages of 18 and 20 with hazardous materials endorsements. The basis of that testimony was really that at the time we were under the belief, after talking with some federal partners and our understanding of the regulations, that this actually jeopardized the program integrity of the CDL program in Wyoming. As we have continued to evolve and look through that, we have found out that there are potential monetary penalties to that, but it does not actually jeopardize the actual program. So as part of that, I'm coming before you guys today to say that there are some policy considerations there that we're certainly willing to talk through with you guys in the committee. I did not want to think that we were steering you guys in any sort of wrong direction, but I did want to come back and write that with you guys now in the event that we wanted to discuss that either today or even at the November meeting. So with that, I'd certainly stand for any questions related to that May meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I appreciate your professionalism and making that correction right up front. That speaks to your character and your professionalism. I think that's something that after we get through this bill draft, we'll consider. I think that's probably something that'll come up in November, especially if we get a bill draft going. So we have at least a vehicle to make that decision as you gather more information.
I'll second that as well. Thank you very much. And I think I'll just tack on that just a little bit, but I think that shows the professionalism of the agency that we're working with on a regular basis too, to come out and publicly state that you guys messed up and say, hey, look, we own it. Much appreciated. The committee, I speak on behalf of the committee. Thank you for that. And my guess is that we will likely have a bill draft that will put us at least in the discussion. So with that though, let's go ahead and move into your discussion on the CDL downgrade.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do believe I will turn this over to Ms. Zimmerman here. We may discuss the bill, the merits of the bill, have some discussion with you guys about that, but I also believe that she can offer up an alternative as well. I think it should be a pretty good discussion. So I thank you with that, Mr. Chairman. If you'll allow me, I'll turn it over to Ms. Zimmerman.
I'm not going to allow you. Nope, it's over. Ms. Zimmerman.
Chairman Brown, members of the committee, again, Misty Zimmerman, Driver Services Program Manager. As the bill is written here, it does fall in line with our federal requirements. Currently, right now, the 60 days does fall in line with our requirement to downgrade a driver within 60 days of them not giving us a medical. The one thing that I will note is that the federal requirement also is within 10 days of not having a valid medical certificate on file, that driver is marked not certified. And what not certified means is there's a requirement in the law or in the regulation that says any interstate driver must be certified in order to operate a commercial motor vehicle. So the minute that driver goes to not certified, they effectively downgrade anyway because they're not able to operate that motor vehicle. So we do believe that this bill as it's written would allow us to satisfy the requirements that are outlined in the federal regulation. We do think that we could maybe address this issue through rules and regs, which would then prevent us from having to change the statute should the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration change our requirement in the future. With your permission, I can walk through that, or I think you guys received a handout that we want to talk about, or whatever you choose to do at this point.
Committee, let's, before I go into this, let's see if there's any questions on the bill itself. I don't believe there was through the explanation, so I don't think we need to go back through there, but the pamphlet of information that you provided us, I think what I would prefer, just for the essence of time, is maybe give us what the process, I guess, in my opinion, that the process would look like if you guys took the directive from the committee at this point to say, start republishing some rules, and we don't have anything put together. When would this be taking effect versus us changing the law, waiting for you guys to come through this, which is going to take effect quicker and make sure that we're taking care of the situation?
Chairman Brown, members of the committee, as the rule is currently written, it doesn't specify the fact that the downgrade is specified as a valid license. So the way that we're interpreting the section 11A is that if a driver downgrades, that for more than 2 years, they no longer hold a valid license because they've been downgraded to a non-commercial. We do think by simply adding the words "that shall not apply to a CDL holder that has been downgraded due to the medical requirement," we can handle that there. There's nothing prohibitive from us that prohibits us right now from doing that at this point.
So this would be general rulemaking process. You guys could start this tomorrow in essence, and my guess is it probably wouldn't be tomorrow, but you guys could effectively start this process without us needing to go through the process of sponsoring a bill, potentially watching it not make a vote, all those types of things. I think that's the safer bet, in my opinion, but I just want to make sure that you guys feel confident that we don't need to run a bill in order for this to be rectified.
Mr. Chairman, I do believe that is the case. I think, again, if this body is giving us policy direction, it seems as it is, I believe this change is allowable. And as Ms. Zimmerman mentions, if that's the direction we want to go, instead of having a bill out there, we can just start that rulemaking process and get this thing down the road.
Okay. Yes, Chairman Boner.
And so, I mean, I think that's fairly clear. That's what we're asking for. And if anybody has a different opinion, that now be the time to voice it. But so just, you said you can, I need to hear definitively that you will, if we don't vote to draft the bill, that you will pursue rulemaking. And if that's the case, how long is it going to take till it's implemented?
Mr. Chairman, Doctor, we will absolutely take this as directive from this committee to have us enter into this rulemaking. As for an estimate, I look back at my rule makers. It may take a little bit to get it through, but I believe we could get this thing done more quickly than we'd be able to get it done through the legislative process, get it through an effective date and everything like that. So I do think this would be a more expedient way to get it done.
Okay, Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you have it done by the next committee meeting?
No, no. It's a minimum of 120 days for rulemaking process. And that's if they were, again, to start yesterday. So, Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Being they don't have to worry themselves with an efficiency study, 120 days seems fairly adequate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, committee, anything further? All right. So again, I guess we won't even pin a letter or a memo from the chairman. If you guys are taking that direction, we'll just hope to have an update at our next meeting, just letting us know where you guys are at in the process. Appreciate that. With that, we can certainly go to Sheila. Sheila, do you have any? Okay, yeah, I'm getting 2 thumbs up. And then I'll open it up for public comment on this. We did have some comments coming from the majority floor leader, sorry. I think his comments are pretty much that he just wants to make sure that we're taking care of there. That does take us to the end of the agenda. However, Chairman, would you care to do you want to make a motion on that proposed bill draft?
All right, yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we get a bill draft going for our next meeting that would require YDOT to offer hazmat certification on commercial licenses for 18 to 20-year-olds. And if that's correct, let me know. If not, I'll take a friendly amendment, so.
Yep, second.
Okay.
So I stole the second because I just want to get this moving. That being said, any discussion on this from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Okay. The only thing I would say on that, Director, is as you guys are proceeding and working with LSO on that process, there was some potentiality of what those ramifications would be. I'd like to get those as concrete as possible so we have a good understanding of what our policy implications would be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that was one of my concerns, is to make sure that we had the ability to comment on the impacts on the bill, which is what we do. But we will definitely put together a memo as soon as we see the draft, or we won't see the draft, but possibly see the draft before. We'll definitely comment, but we kind of know the direction you're going, so hopefully we can preemptively start drafting. Thank you.
All right, committee, any further directives for this evening before we head out? All right. With that, 8:30 tomorrow morning, Chairman Boner is going to do much better than I did today. We're only an hour behind, but not too bad. With that, we're adjourned.
And don't forget dinner.